Hi everyone, Jesse Brockwell from Capstone Academics here. Thanks so much for joining, and this is just a quick intro to get you guys familiarized with exactly how these videos should be used. All these videos are walkthroughs for the problems in the College Board official SAT study guide. Most people are going to find it best to try and work through a section of the book themselves and then check their answers. Then watch these videos to help them understand any problems they answered incorrectly or didn't answer at all. This is really how these videos are meant to be used, but I highly recommend that you actually watch these videos all the way through, especially if there are any problems that you had to guess or hack at in order to get it right. If you've got that nagging feeling that a problem could have been done more efficiently, then chances are a better approach is actually covered in the videos. So, for best results, just watch the videos all the way through or carefully skip around if you like. If you're doing this for the reading or writing and language sections in particular though, be sure to make sure you actually read through the entire passage because all these explanations are given under the assumption that you have read these passages already. But again, you're probably better off just working through the whole section yourself ahead of time, that way you can at least give it a shot on your own first. So, with introductions out of the way, let's get started. Okay guys, so for the reading, I'm going to assume that you've read the passage before watching this video just because you want to be, intimately familiar with everything that happened. You should have just read it, that way it's really fresh in your mind and we can go through these and sort of, make sense of everything. So this is basically a passage about a guy who approaches the mother of his bride-to-be personally, okay, instead of hiring a mediator or a go-between. To come and ask the family's permission for him to marry his bride-to-be. Okay, so this is, if you look back in the description here, it's Japan in 1920. So the setting's a little bit different, and back then, as a male looking to, marry your bride, you weren't supposed to come directly and ask the parents for permission. You were supposed to hire a mediator. It was just sort of custom back then. So that was, one of the big points in this passage, and let's just get started here. So, which choice best describes what happens in the passage? This is a very broad question, right? They're basically asking, what properly summarizes the passage. So, one character argues with another. You're going to see me doing this a lot where I just underline one word that makes, I should say this, it is the key portion of the answer that you're testing, right? So, it'll either make the answer right or wrong depending upon the situation. One character argues with another who intrudes on her home. Intruding, no, not so much. And arguing, not really. No, he's just come to ask permission, so A is out. And then B, one character receives a surprising request from another character. Did that happen? Yes, the mom was pretty taken aback, right? And it was really unusual for, for him to approach the mother directly because, again, he was supposed to hire a mediator. So B actually works. Let's leave it around. And then going through C here, reminisces about choices he has made over the years. No, this is sort of immediately after in terms of this part right here. He's just sort of reflecting on the entire experience in that first paragraph, which we'll get back to in a second. But reminiscing over the years, not really, right? And then D, criticizes another character for pursuing an unexpected course of action. Now, this is a bit too narrow because this isn't exactly what happened in the entirety of the passage, right? So even if the mom didn't really approve of the approach, that's just a minor part of the entire passage. It doesn't act as a proper summary, okay? So B is your best answer for 1. Now, looking at 2, which best describes the developmental pattern? It's helpful to underline pieces of the question to help keep you focused on exactly what they're asking for. So how is the passage unfolding in general? Is it a careful analysis of a traditional practice? In other words, are they taking this entire tradition and unpacking it and describing why it exists and analyzing whether it's a good or a bad thing? Not really, so chop A. Is it a detailed depiction of a meaningful encounter? This all works well because, it's got all these details about the night that he came to approach the mom and, how it was raining and stuff and how there was a fire and everything like that. And was it a meaningful encounter? It definitely was. It's a major life turning point. He's going to ask his bride-to-be to marry him, basically, or he means to. And then, so we'll leave B around. C, is it a definitive response to a series of questions? He doesn't actually get an answer throughout this entire thing. So a definitive response, no. And then looking at D, is it a cheerful recounting? Make sure to key into the tone here. Was this actually super cheerful? Not really. It was more like serious, right? Again, big turning point in his life. Was it an amusing anecdote? No. An anecdote is a story, like a short story. And was it amusing? Not really. The tone of this passage is much more serious, so you can chop D, confidently answer B. 3 is kind of funny because for 3, most people read this as without meditation, okay? But this is mediation. So again, a mediator is someone who acts as what's called a go-between. So let's say, a couple gets in a really nasty divorce or something, and the ex-husband won't even talk to the ex-wife and vice versa when they're trying to, settle all their finances and stuff like that, right? What they might end up doing is hiring a mediator or a third party to communicate between the two of them. So the ex-husband will be like, tell her I said this to the mediator. So the mediator go tell the ex-wife, right? And then the ex-wife would tell the mediator, like, tell him I said this. So you get what I mean, right? This guy's in the middle. So if you look at, as used in line 1 and line 65, coming directly, breaking all tradition, that's line 1 there. And then 65, he's asking directly, in other words, coming to the mom and asking permission to marry the mother's daughter, right? So that is explicitly not using a mediator the way he was supposed to, or the way, tradition called for. So yeah, that is this. So frankly is just, frankly is just very, it's a synonym for directly, but it's more so cutting straight to the point and not mincing your words, which is not necessarily the meaning here. Coming confidently, yeah, he came confidently, but the point was he didn't use a mediator, okay, so that's out too. With precision, no. And there you go. Number 4 gets a lot of people because it's easy to mess up whose perspective you're coming from, okay? So which reaction does Akira, so the groom-to-be, most fear from the mother, okay? So it's what he's most worried about. That's really important to remember. So he's worried that she'll consider his proposal inappropriate. That's actually pretty accurate because if you look up here, it says, please don't judge my candidacy by the unseemliness of this proposal. In other words, me coming directly to you and not hiring a mediator the way I'm supposed to and the way, tradition and custom would have me do it, okay? So he is worried about that. A is pretty strong, so let's leave that around for now. And then if you look at B, she'll mistake his earnestness for immaturity. A lot of people pick this one because they see this part where it's like that's how she viewed him as a child, okay? So even if that is how she views him, even if she thinks that he's immature, that's not what he's worried about. It never says that he's worried that she'll think he's immature, okay? It's about what he's worried about. So you can chop B for that reason. And then looking at C here, she'll consider his unscheduled visit an imposition. That is maybe a factor, but the greater concern here is that he didn't follow tradition and hire a mediator. So the imposition thing just isn't strong enough, so you can eliminate C. And then if you look at D here, she'll underestimate the sincerity of his emotions. So basically she'll think that he's not serious about marrying her daughter. Not really, okay? Like, even if she's not taking him seriously, again, this is about what the groom is worried about, okay? And it doesn't explicitly say that, he's not, or she's not going to think that he's serious, right? So D is out, and then A is good there. So if we look at 5, now, the answer to 5 is actually what I underlined up here. He's really, really worried that the way he went about this is the issue, okay? So he's worried there. And then if you look at 6, in the passage, Akira addresses the mom, I hope I'm saying this right, but Chia, with affection but not genuine love. So is he being affectionate to the mother? Tone-wise, not really. He's got a very serious request that he's making, so he's not being super affectionate, okay? Objectivity but not complete impartiality. This isn't really a case of being objective, right? He's making a very serious request to a mother outside the norms of tradition, right? There's nothing to be really objective about, so you can eliminate B for that reason. Is Akira addressing her with amusement? No, there's no levity or joy in this passage. It's pretty serious, right? So definitely not this. Respect but not utter deference, okay? Deference is submission. A lot of people get caught up on this word. But you could sort of eliminate using all the words that I underlined here. And if these are not perfect fits, you can confidently eliminate these. Remember, the answer will always be 100% correct. So if it sort of feels like maybe, chances are it's not, okay? But this is a perfect fit. He is respectful to the mother, but he's not utterly submissive because he is looking her in the eyes because he wants her to know that he's very serious about his request to marry her daughter. So yeah, this one works. Number 7 gets a lot of people, and it's no wonder because they say, like, okay, what's the main purpose of the first paragraph? And strangely enough, the first paragraph kind of occurs after the rest of the passage already finished. This is Akira reflecting on how he approached Chia, his bride-to-be's mother, and he's kind of wondering, like, if I had hired a mediator, would Chia have been more receptive? So he's sort of thinking back on it. Now, if we go through these, is the first paragraph describing a culture? No, definitely not, right? Not really. Criticizing a tradition. Is he criticizing the actual tradition? No. He's just sort of wondering if it could have gone better. Is he questioning a suggestion? There's no suggestion here. Is he analyzing a reaction? Yeah, he's analyzing Chia's reaction. So, there we go. D. And then for 8, as used in line 2, form most nearly means. Now, this is called a word and context question, and the best strategy for these is actually don't even look at the answers once you realize that it is a word and context question. Go back to line 2, have a look at the word they're talking about, read the sentence and try replacing the word with your own synonym, again, before you even look at these. So going here, had he followed form, had he asked his mother to speak to his father to approach a go-between, would Chia have been more receptive? So in this case, had he followed, let's say, tradition, right? Then you can go through these and match the word that works with your synonym, because a lot of times these will all be synonyms in some kind of way for the word in question. And the only way to properly sort of find the synonym for how this is used in context is to use your own synonym, right? So we said tradition. Does tradition mean appearance? No. Custom? Yeah, pretty much. Structure? Not really. Not the way like a physical structure works. It's just not as strong as an answer as B is, right? So D, had he followed nature? No. The other thing, guys, is when you plug in this answer, it has to work perfectly as a replacement for the word in here. So had he followed nature? No. Had he followed custom? Yeah, that actually works. So B is perfect. And then going on to 9 here. Why does Akira say his meeting with Chia is a matter of urgency? So line 32, so if we go here, so it's, I come with a matter of urgency. So this is actually really key, the urgency part of this, okay? It's urgent because he's been offered this job here. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community, okay? So he needs an answer right away. That's the issue here. Now, he fears that his own parents will disapprove of Naomi. There's no evidence for this, right? So, and then B, he worries that Naomi will reject him and marry someone else. She's not looking at anyone else, right? At least there's no evidence for that. And then C, he's been offered an attractive job in another country. That works. So we'll do our due diligence, look at D. He knows that she is unaware of his feelings for Naomi. Maybe so, but that's not why it's urgent, okay? That's why I underline urgent here. So C is definitely best. And then I snuck 10 in over here. Which choice provides the best evidence for the answer to the previous question? So these are a little bit tricky because you have to go through all of them and make sure that it is the very best evidence for why it was a matter of urgency. And remember, the answer was that he was offered an attractive job in another country, okay? So it's urgent because he needs to give a response to this job offer that he has, right? So if we sort of go through the options, these are going to be the most time-consuming questions, but that's okay. Just sort of accept that and make sure you take your time going through these. So if you go to line 39 here, so in the line 39 portion, it starts with I don't and ends with you. That's what encompasses this answer. So if we go to line 39, I don't want to trouble you. Is that why it's urgent? Because he doesn't want to trouble her? No. And then if you look at B, lines 39 through 42, starting with normally and ending with community. So that's actually where we underline here. I don't want to trouble you. Normally I would approach you more properly, but I've received word of a position. I have an opportunity to go to America as a dentist for Seattle's Japanese community. So is that why it's urgent? Yes, it is, okay, because he was offered that job. So for now, we'll circle that. But then C here, lines 58 to 59, this is definitely the next most popular answer. If you go to 58, that's right here. Depending upon your response, I may stay in Japan. I've come to ask for Naomi's hand. This is a very attractive answer, okay? But the SAT is super direct in the way they want you to answer things. This is sort of reading in between the lines like, yeah, that's why, this is an issue, sort of the deeper reason, but it doesn't illustrate why it's urgent in the first place. The reason why it's urgent in the first place is because he was offered this job, okay? So that is the most direct evidence for why it is urgent. So I would say that lines 58 and 59 are sort of a leap beyond that, okay? So it's not actually providing the direct reasoning for why it's urgent. The job is why it's urgent, right? Not the response to the whole situation. So this is out. And then if you look at 72 to 73 here, so he's just saying in 72, I see I've startled you. That's not why it's urgent, right? So B. The second passage involves gift giving and gift receiving. So basically what these guys are saying is a lot of people feel that spending a lot of money on a gift will show the person that you're giving the gift to that you really care about them. So givers tend to spend disproportionate amounts of money trying to convey like, hey, I care about you. Look at all this money I spent on your gift. Whereas the recipient, because they're just grateful for the gift in general, they don't really care exactly how much the gift giver spent. So they're kind of discussing like this sort of mismatch between how much the money spent on the gift matters in the giver's opinion versus the recipient. So the giver thinks spending a lot of money means a lot, but the recipient really doesn't mind sort of either way, like how much you spend. They just appreciate the sentiment of the gift. So that's basically what this is illustrating. So if we go through here, now 11, the authors most likely use the examples in lines 1 through 9 of the passage to highlight. So if we just sort of hone in on that. So 1 through 9 is like right there. So it's just mentioning a bunch of times that Americans have to shop for gifts, right? So we've got like holiday gifts, right? Most people regularly buy presents for other occasions throughout the year, weddings, birthdays, anniversaries, graduations. So they're just talking about how often people have to shop for gifts. So if we go through the answer options here and just sort of eliminate as we go, if we hone in on this is the essence of A, the regularity or the often-ness with which people shop for gifts. This is actually really strong, so let's keep this around. And then if you look at B, the recent increase in the amount of money spent on gifts. They don't really mention that, so you can chop B for that reason. And then if you look at C, anxiety gift shopping causes for consumers. So there may be some associated anxiety, but they don't really discuss that here, okay? So C is out. And then D. D is actually really close, the number of special occasions. So if you sort of analyze the difference between A and D here, A is trying to say how often people shop for gifts, okay? And that is actually what they're trying to highlight here. They're not trying to say there are a bunch of times when people have to shop for gifts, like there's, all these different events where you have to do it. They're trying to say people shop for gifts all the time, and they're well practiced at it. So that's what A is saying. Okay, it's more directly spelling that out. Now, if we look at 12, 12 gets a lot of people. It's a word and context question. They're asking what ambivalent means in line 10. Remember, the strategy for these is to go back into the passage before even looking at these answers, okay? And see how they were using the word in question. You want to try and replace it with your own synonym, because a lot of times these answer options can actually be valid. They're all valid synonyms for this, okay? It's not every time, but sometimes all these will be valid synonyms for the word in context here. So in order to be sure about your answer, you're going to want to go back in, replace this word with your own word, and then choose the synonym for the word that you found, okay? So if we go back to line 10 here, this is a little tough because you have to read ahead, okay? This frequent experience of gift giving can engender ambivalent feelings in gift givers. So tough word for most people. You have to keep going to see what ambivalent meant in this context. Many relish the opportunity to buy presents because gift giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers. A lot of people get caught on relish. It's not a condiment. Yes, it is, but you know what I'm saying. So relish just means cherish. So many people cherish the opportunity to buy presents because gift giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds with one's closest peers, okay? At the same time, many dread the thought of buying gifts. They worry that their purchases will disappoint rather than delight the intended recipients. So some people really look forward to it and other people get really nervous about it, okay? So if they're trying to say the frequent experience of gift giving can engender ambivalent feelings, you could say that ambivalent means unsure here, right? Because it could go one way or the other. Now, if you go through here, unrealistic, no. Conflicted, that actually works with what we put in here for unsure, right? So, and I'll just write that. This is the word we use, is unsure. And then apprehensive. Apprehensive means fearful, okay? But if you didn't know what apprehensive means, you would just keep it around for now. And then supportive, not really with what we came up with, right? So between B and C, what's stronger? Even if you didn't know what apprehensive means, you would pick B because conflicted works so well, right? Because some people really enjoy the opportunity to buy gifts and other people really didn't. So yeah, that's the answer to 12. Moving on to 13 here. The authors indicate that people value gift giving because they feel it. So a lot of people choose A here. And this is a common sense trap, it's called. Like, it may make sense that gift giving is a form of self-expression, but if the passage didn't discuss it, it's not valid as an answer, okay? So you can chop it for that reason. An inexpensive way to show appreciation. Inexpensive, not so much, okay? The whole passage is about how people tend to spend too much money on gifts when they didn't really need to spend that much, okay? Because they think spending more money means the gift will be more appreciated. So definitely not this. And remember, this is why people value gift giving, so why they like to give gifts, okay? And then C, it requires the gift recipient to reciprocate. They didn't really mention anything about the back and forth nature of gifts and how people really just want to give gifts so that they'll get them back. That's not really what's happening here. So you can chop C. And it is going to be D, but we'll make sure this is, we're answering this confidently, that it can serve to strengthen a relationship. Did they ever mention this? And they actually did. So I'll just use some red here. Many people relish the opportunity to buy presents because gift giving offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds. Okay, so yeah, there is direct evidence of that. So here we go. And then for 14, the key to these guys, okay, I've actually heard of viral SAT advice on TikTok, right? Saying for, these questions that, ask about the lines that prove the answer to the previous question, what you should really do is instead of answering 13 first, you should go to 14 and then read all the lines and use the lines to help you. Then go back and then answer 13, okay? Do not do that, and here's why. Some of these answers, doesn't happen every time, but sometimes some of these answers will be bait for wrong answers in the previous question, okay? So it's not a good way to go about it because if they're laying traps in these lines here that could kind of serve wrong answers here, then you're going to get it wrong. So what you're going to want to do is answer 13 super confidently like we did, and then hone in on the exact lines that directly spell out the answer to the previous question. So the lines that we pick have to actually say that gift giving strengthens a relationship. And if you look at what we underlined in red, like that definitely says that, right? It spells it out very explicitly. So it is going to be A. We're going to go through these other lines so just so you can see how it's not directly spelling it out the same way A is, right? So if we look at line 22 to 23, that would be over here. So going from people buy gifts that recipients would not choose to buy on their own. Is that why people value gift giving? Because it serves to strengthen a relationship? No. And then if you look at 31 to 32, research has found that people often struggle to take account of others' perspectives. Is that why people value gift giving? Because it can strengthen a relationship? No. And then 44 to 47. So going here, although a link between gift price and feelings of appreciation might seem intuitive to gift givers, such assumption may be unfounded. That's not proving that they value gift giving because it strengthens a relationship. Whereas if you go back to A here, line 10, it offers a powerful means to build stronger bonds, right? So that's pretty explicitly spelling it out. Okay, so that's how you approach these questions. Moving on to 15 here, the social psychologist mentioned in paragraph 2 would likely describe the deadweight loss as something. So if we just hone in on that, 17 through 34, so here's the deadweight loss they're talking about. And then if you look at where they mention the social psychologists, right here, okay, they said it's not surprising. So if you go through this, predictable, that makes pretty good sense. Questionable, not surprising doesn't mean questionable, right? Disturbing, no, they didn't say it bothered them. Unprecedented, like something like that's never happened before. No, they're just trying to say it's not surprising, so predictable makes total sense. Okay, now 16, this can be a little bit tricky, but you have to be careful about sort of how you approach this and hone in on the piece of the question that makes this easy to answer. It's the assumption made by gift givers. So we've actually been talking about this the whole time. The thing that they're assuming is that the more money they spend on the gift, the more it will be appreciated. Okay, so that's the first thing you'd want to identify before even looking at these answer options, right? Like, what is this assumption they're talking about in line 41 through 44? So I'll show you what I mean here. 41 starts here. The gift givers equate how much they spend with how much recipients will appreciate the gift. The more expensive the gift, the stronger a gift recipient's feelings of appreciation. Okay, so that's the assumption that the gift givers are making. And they move on to say that they're wrong, right? So let's actually start here, because this is going to help for the next question. Why do gift givers assume the gift price is closely linked to gift recipients' feelings of appreciation? Perhaps givers believe that bigger, more expensive gifts convey stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. We've talked about this. According to Kammerer and others, gift giving represents a symbolic ritual whereby gift givers attempt to signal their positive attitudes toward the intended recipient and their willingness to invest resources in a future relationship. In this sense, gift givers may be motivated to spend more money on a gift in order to send a stronger signal to their intended recipient. Here's the key part. As for gift recipients, they may not construe smaller and larger gifts as representing smaller and larger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. So in other words, it doesn't matter how much they spend. So this assumption that these gift givers are making is wrong. So that's the thing you'd identify before even looking at the answers. Now, when you go through this, insincere. Is the assumption insincere? No, they're being genuine about it, right? So A is no. Is the assumption unreasonable? This is where people get caught pretty often, right? Because unreasonable kind of does mean wrong, but also foolish, right? So they don't actually say that it's foolish to assume that spending more money would cause greater appreciation on the part of the recipient, right? That's not something they actually pointed out. So this might be a little bit too extreme. We'll keep it around just in case, but if you go on to see incorrect, this is a great fit because they're literally just wrong that spending more money will engender, more feelings of thoughtfulness and appreciation, right? So they're just kind of wrong about that. So C looks great too. Substantiated just means supported, okay? But let's say you didn't know what this meant. You would leave this around anyway. And we talked about this being kind of too extreme. This was like the Goldilocks answer because it's, the level of severity is perfect. They're just technically wrong. They're not unreasonable because unreasonable means foolish as well. And then substantiated, let's say you didn't know what it meant. It does mean supported, but let's say you didn't know. You would choose the one that's a perfect fit, even though it's a simpler word, okay? Don't get trapped by these bait answers that are just sort of tough vocab words that are there as a trap, okay? Because a lot of people will be like, well, I don't know what that means, and then they'll just pick this, right? But in a lot of cases, the simpler answer can actually be the correct answer. So yeah, keep that in mind. So I've included 16 on the next set of questions just because 17 is asking about the lines that actually prove the answer to the previous question, right? And remember, the way you have to approach these line-based questions is to answer the first one super confidently, okay? So be really, really sure about your answer here and, based upon the previous set of questions, like we are very sure about why it's incorrect and not unreasonable, right? So they were just technically wrong about the fact that it takes more money to please the gift recipient, right? Like you have to spend more. Not necessarily true, right? So we have to choose the lines that provide the best evidence for the answer to the previous question, okay? Remember, this is talking about the assumption made by gift givers. And the assumption was that the more money they spend, the more the recipient will appreciate the gift, okay? But these lines have to illustrate that this is the answer to that assumption, that it is incorrect, okay? So we're going to choose the lines that spell out that the gift givers are wrong about this assumption. So if we go through 53 to 55 here, starting with perhaps givers believe that stronger, more expensive gifts convey stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. That's just illustrating the assumption that they're making. It's not showing that they're incorrect about that assumption, okay? So A is out. 55 through 60, starting with according. So according to Kammer and others, gift giving represents a symbolic ritual whereby gift givers attempt to signal their positive attitude toward the intended recipient and their willingness to invest resources in a future relationship. So in plain English here, they're just talking about what gift giving means and just sort of the relationship aspects of that, right? The relationship building aspects. So is that illustrating that the gift givers are wrong about spending more money means more appreciation? No, it doesn't illustrate that they're wrong about that. Now, if you go to C here, 63 to 65, ask for gift recipients, right? They may not construe smaller and larger gifts as representing smaller and larger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. This is a really strong option because it's showing that the recipients don't care about how much the giver spent. So C is great. Let's do our due diligence and evaluate D. So 75 to 78. In theoretical terms, people fail to utilize information about their preferences and experiences in order to produce more efficient outcomes in their exchange relations. So here, in this segment of the passage, they're just talking about how even though people slip in and out of the roles of like gift giver and gift recipient all the time, for some reason they can't put it together that when they receive gifts, they don't really care how much the other person spent, right? But when they go to give a gift, they think it does matter. And they're just pointing out the incongruity with that. Like for some reason, people can't realize that it doesn't matter how much money you spend on a gift, right? So this is just pointing out that they fail to realize. It's not pointing out that they're wrong with the same level of accuracy that C is. So 17 is C. 18, another word and context question. Remember not to look at these at all, okay? Go straight to line 54, replace convey with your own word. So let's do it. 54, perhaps givers believe that bigger gifts convey stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. I would say express. So bigger gifts express stronger signals of thoughtfulness, okay? So now we look for a synonym for express. And it's kind of funny, like if you chose communicate, sometimes the word that you replace this with will actually be one of the words in the options. So that's a pretty confident way of answering, right? If you actually find your word in here. But yeah, so looking for synonyms for express, okay? Transport, no, that literally means to bring something from somewhere to somewhere else, right? Counteract, nope. Exchange, no. We're not exchanging, it's trying to transmit, right? Or express from one person to another. And communicate works perfectly there, okay? 19 gets a lot of people. So the authors refer to work by Kammer and others in order to, and we have a few strong options here, okay? But this is sort of an author's craft question in terms of like, what exactly were they doing here when they mentioned it? So let's look at the order that this was presented in. If you look at the beginning of the paragraph, it starts out with, why do gift givers assume that gift price is closely linked to gift recipients' feelings of appreciation? Maybe gift givers believe that more expensive gifts convey stronger signals of thoughtfulness and consideration. Okay, so they're proposing that this may be why people spend more money on gifts, is they think that it communicates a bigger signal of like, I love you, care about you, right? So, and then this is where they mention Kammer and others. Okay, so according to this study, gift giving represents a symbolic ritual, right? They're signaling positive attitudes and stuff like that, but the placement of this is really, really key. Okay, so offer an explanation. This actually works really well because they're sort of starting out with a question like, why do givers think that price matters so much? And then they propose their own explanation for it. Perhaps gift givers believe that bigger or more expensive gifts convey stronger signals, right? And then they have a study that's sort of explaining their reasoning, okay? So offering an explanation to sort of back up their claim works really well. Is it introducing an argument? No, because they've already proposed their explanation for the question that they posed initially, right? Are they questioning a motive? No, they're not. Are they supporting a conclusion? Not really, because if they were working up to a conclusion, it would occur at the end of the paragraph all the way down here, okay? So it's more so they communicated the answer and then they backed it up with a study. So it's explaining their answer with a study, okay? But D was pretty close, yeah. So moving on to 20 here, the graph offers evidence that gift givers base their predictions of how much a gift will be appreciated on. So if you look at this, the title is really important. Givers perceived and recipients actual appreciation. So for the giver, if you look at the y-axis here, this is like an appreciation rating, okay? So a giver thinks that a less expensive gift would only be appreciated this much, but a more expensive gift would be appreciated way more, okay? But on the recipient's end, like a less expensive gift, maybe even a teeny bit more appreciated than a more expensive gift, right? But the major discrepancy is right here. Like the giver really thinks that spending more money makes a huge difference in the appreciation level, right? So if you look at these, which one basically spells that out? The appreciation level of the gift recipients. So we'll go back to the question here. Which offers evidence that gift givers base their predictions of how much a gift will be appreciated on? So the appreciation level of the gift recipients? No. The monetary value? Yes, because they're saying like a more expensive gift would be more appreciated. And remember, we're focusing on this aspect of the graph. It's just from the giver's perspective. So B looks really good. C, their own desires. No, that's not a part of this at all. Their relationship with the gift recipients. Again, not communicated in the graph. Just remember monetary value means money, right? So, or price. And then for 21, the authors would likely attribute the differences in gift giver and recipient mean appreciation as represented in the graph to, so they're saying like, why is there this difference between what the what the givers would think is appreciated versus what the recipients will appreciate? Why is there a difference here? And an inability to shift perspective. That's really strong, and we'll talk about why in a second. An increasingly materialistic culture. No, I mean, that's a common sense trap because, yes, the culture could be materialistic with all this gift giving, gift receiving, and everything like that, but that's not what the authors are saying is the difference between these appreciation levels, so no. And then C, a growing opposition to gift giving. Opposition? No, that wasn't mentioned, okay. And then D, a misunderstanding of intentions. This one gets a lot of attention. A lot of kids answer this one, but if you translate it into your own words, this would basically mean like the difference in appreciation levels is because people don't really understand the gift giver's intentions. No, that's not really what this is about. So it is A, but let's point out why it's A, okay? So down here at the end of paragraph 1, it says, research has found that people often struggle to take account of others' perspectives, right? So people have trouble getting out of their own mind and into someone else's shoes, right? So that's what that's saying. And then there's another part in here. So this right here. Okay. So even though people jump in and out of the role of gift giver and gift receiver all the time, they have a hard time sort of getting out of their own head and realizing like, oh, I wouldn't care how much someone spends on my gift, so someone else isn't going to either. And yeah, that's an inability to shift perspective. Okay, guys, so the third passage is the first science passage, and it's actually the only passage in the book that really almost requires you to remember the structure of DNA. Like, yeah, they describe it verbally here, like the basic layout of everything, but it really, really helps for you to have taken biology. And if you haven't taken biology, at least have seen the structure of DNA in like some kind of way. But I'm going to have a little graphic here that I'm going to pull up that's going to help you visualize everything. But basically this is saying like in 1953, Watson and Crick were the ones, who discovered the structure of DNA, and they're sort of talking about the basic layout of it. So they say that the molecule is a very long chain, the backbone of which consists of a regular alternation of sugar and phosphate groups. So I'm just going to explain what that means in a second, but to each sugar is attached a nitrogenous base, which can be one of 4 different types. Could be adenine and guanine, thymine, or cytosine. So if you look at the basic DNA structure, you might remember this. So the sugar phosphate backbone is this blue part right here. So I'm going to take a second to describe what that looks like in this other graphic. So the phosphate sugar backbone is called that because it alternates between phosphates, which are the red squares here, and sugars, which are the blue pentagons. So it goes like phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, phosphate, sugar, and so on. So that's the blue sort of backbone that composes the main structure of DNA, right? And then in the middle, you've got what are called the base pairs, or the nitrogenous bases. And they're composed of adenine and thymine, and adenine and thymine will always pair together. So like they can't pair this way, like adenine can't pair with guanine or, diagonally or anything like that. Adenine always has to be paired with thymine, and then guanine always has to be paired with cytosine. Okay, so those are the nitrogenous bases in the middle, but the basic sort of backbone that they'll consistently refer to is always made of the sugar phosphate alternations that you're seeing here. Okay, it's going to be kind of important to know. So having this image in your head before reading this passage is really, really helpful. But yeah, you can get by. So yeah, that's the basic structure of it. And then they're sort of getting into the fact that there are 2 chains. And I'm trusting you've already read this passage, so you're sort of familiar with what they said, right? A lot of people have trouble visualizing this, so that's why I had the graphic up there. And yeah, the rest of it we'll get into. But let's dive right in. So number 22, the authors use the word backbone in lines 3 and 39. Let's go ahead and look at that. Here's the backbone. I actually already underlined that. The backbone of which consists of a regular alternation of sugar and phosphate groups. So that's the line 3 portion. And then line 39, again, they refer to it as the phosphate sugar backbone, right? It's completely regular. So for some reason, they really, really love for you to know that regular means repeating. So if you think about regularity in general, that's almost like often-ness with which you do something. So yeah, you're repeating that action. So if we look here, the authors use the word backbone in lines 3 and 39 to indicate that for A, only very long chains of DNA can be taken from an organism with a spinal column. They didn't actually say that, so A is out. And then B, the main structure of a chain in a DNA molecule is composed of repeating units. There we go. Okay, so leave B around. That's a pretty strong candidate. And then looking at C, a chain in a DNA molecule consists of entirely of phosphate groups or of sugars. That's not entirely true because we have those phosphate groups as well, right? So C is out for that reason. And then if you look at D, nitrogenous bases form the main structural unit of DNA. That's not what they said. They said the entire sort of DNA chain is built off of this phosphate sugar blue backbone, and then there are little connecting nucleotides in the middle, right? But the main structure of it is a sugar phosphate group. So that's why B is such a strong candidate, okay? And then 3, a student claims that nitrogenous bases pair randomly, which we already established doesn't happen, right? Because adenine only pairs with thymine, guanine only pairs with cytosine, and vice versa, okay? So this student's claiming that they pair randomly with one another. Which of the following statements contradicts the student's claim? So these lines would have to articulate that it's not random, and in fact there's some kind of order to it, right? Or designated way that it happens. So if you look at lines 5 through 6 here, To each sugar is attached a nitrogenous base, which can be of 4 different types. Does that disprove that they just pair randomly? No. It's just like a fun fact, right? And then lines 9 through 10, so far as is known, the sequence of bases along the chain is irregular. That just means that on one chain here, so one side of this, like adenine, guanine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, on one side of the chain, it's totally irregular, meaning it doesn't repeat, okay? So that's just sort of one strand of DNA and the nucleotides that are appearing there. It doesn't have anything to do with how the nitrogenous bases are pairing with one another across the chain, right? Like between the two blue strands, if you will. So no, this doesn't work either. And then for C, lines 23 through 25, the bases are joined together in pairs, a single base from one chain being hydrogen bonded to a single base from the other. Again, this isn't disproving that they just pair randomly. It's just sort of stating how it works, right? And then if we look at 27 through 29, just to make sure this is good. So 27 right here. One member of a pair must be a purine and the other a pyrimidine in order to bridge between the two chains. So it's saying they can't just randomly pair. One of them has to be a purine, other one's going to be a pyrimidine. Okay, so that is exactly what we want. And then for 24 here, in the second paragraph, lines 12 through 19, what do the authors claim to be a feature of biological interest? So they actually say biological interest in here, so I'm going to hone in on that. So right around line 14, let's see, 11, 12 actually. So the first feature of our structure, which is of biological interest, is that it consists not of one chain, but of two, okay? So they're really concerned about the fact that there are two chains of DNA and not just one. So if we go through this, the chemical formula of DNA, no. Common fiber axis, no. X-ray evidence, no. It was the two-chainness that we really care about, right? So guys, for some of these, I'll be going really in-depth, kind of like I did up here in 22. If it's a really popular question to get wrong, like if students, let's say the correct answer is B, but a lot of students choose A or C instead of B, I will be going through in-depth why A and C are wrong, okay? Just because if I were you, I would definitely want to know, like if I got C, explicitly why C is wrong. And the answers and the explanations in the book don't always do that, which is kind of frustrating, right? So that's why I'll be going in-depth into some of these, the tougher questions here, or the ones that are just sort of commonly answered incorrectly. For other ones like 24, though, that are really easy, you just have to go to the text and get it. I'm not going to go, too far into depth with that. So that was 24. And then looking at 25 here, the main purpose... Ooh, gotta up my underlining game. Main purpose of including the information about X-ray evidence and density is to what? So if we hone in on that, so we gotta find where X-ray evidence is, and that is about here. I'm just gonna use some red for this. However, the density taken with the X-ray evidence suggests very strongly that there are two. Again, they really care about the fact that there are two DNA chains and not just one. So if you look at A here, so they're including that to establish that DNA is the molecule that carries the genetic information. Like, that's true, but that's not what they cared about. They care about the two-chainness of it, right? So A is out. And then for B here, present an alternate hypothesis about the composition of a nucleotide. That's just off topic, right? They didn't mention that. And then for C, provide support for the author's claim about the number of chains. That's really strong. Let's keep that around. And then D, confirm the relationship between the density and the known chemical formula of DNA. They didn't talk about that at all. You can chop that, so we've got C here. All right, I'm going back to green. Now for 26, based on the passage, the author's statement, if a pair consisted of two purines, for example, there would not be room for it. This is probably the one that gets people the most, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to label which ones are purines and which ones are pyrimidines to sort of illustrate something. If you look here, they actually tell you two of the possible bases, adenine and guanine, are the purines. So I'm going to use the table here. Adenine and guanine are the purines, and then they say thymine and cytosine are the pyrimidines. I'll put PY for pyrimidines. And then, so they're asking you to analyze the conclusion you can draw from what they said about the purines being big, okay? So looking here, if a pair consisted of two purines, there would not be room for it. Now remember, adenine can only pair with thymine, and guanine can only pair with cytosine. So these here are the purines and these are the pyrimidines. So if you drew out two strands of DNA, these are the phosphate sugar backbones here, right? I'm just going to sort of roughly draw what they're saying with this, pair of purines thing. So when they're saying a pair of purines, like there wouldn't be room for it, remember that one purine is adenine. So I'm going to draw that, make that kind of big, right? And then it fits together perfectly. This is a gross oversimplification, but fits together perfectly with thymine. So purine and a pyrimidine. And then if you tried to put two purines together, so I'm again going to draw adenine, and then also draw guanine, which is the other pyrimidine. See how they wouldn't fit together? It says there wouldn't be room for it. It means the purines are the bigger ones, right? So if we go through our options of 26, based on the passage, the author's statement, if a pair consisted of two purines, for example, there would not be room for it, implies that a pair of purines would be larger than the space between a sugar and a phosphate group. We don't have evidence for that, so we can't actually say that. And then B, a pair of purines would be larger than a pair consisting of a purine and a pyrimidine. This is a pair of a purine and a pyrimidine. And that fits together perfectly in between the phosphate sugar strands, right? So this one works perfectly because the pair of purines, there's not room for it. It's bigger than this pair of purine and pyrimidine. So looking at C, a pair of pyrimidines would be larger than a pair of purines. Not true. Pyrimidines are the smaller ones, so you can eliminate C. And then D, a pair consisting of a purine and a pyrimidine would be larger than a pair of pyrimidines. They don't directly give us evidence for this, so no. But B, yeah, we can answer really confidently. And then looking at 27, the author's use of the words exact, specific, and complement in 47 to 49. Let's go ahead and find those. So 47, exact, specific, and complement. So if we start at the beginning here so we can actually see what they're saying, if the actual order of the bases on one of the pair of chains were given, one could write down the exact order of the bases on the other one because of the specific pairing. Thus, one chain is, as it were, the complement of the other, and it is this feature which suggests how the deoxyribonucleic acid molecule might duplicate itself. That's really key, okay? So, looking at this here, what they were saying was, because adenine only pairs with thymine and guanine only pairs with cytosine, if you knew the sequence of nucleotides on one side of the chain, you would automatically be able to write down all of the complementary nucleotides that the other chain would have to have, right? Because it's only a one-to-one pairing, like every single time. So she was saying this is probably how DNA replicates itself, because it's a one-to-one pairing, so if you know the sequence of one, you would automatically know the sequence of the other, okay? And that's used in DNA replication, if you remember that from bio. Now, looking here at the options, so why they said that. A, confirm that the nucleotide sequences are known. They didn't really say that, so A is out. B, counter the claim that the sequences of bases along a chain can occur in any order. This is a tricky one because this could be used to counter the claim that sequences could occur in any order, okay? But that's not how she used it. She used it to say this might be how DNA duplicates itself, right? Because of that one-to-one thing. So, and she was focusing on the duplication. We'll leave B around just in case, but yeah, let's keep going. C, support the claim that the phosphate sugar backbone of the author's model is completely regular. So it is completely regular, but that's not why she said this whole thing about the one-to-one pairing of the nucleotides. Again, it was about DNA replication, right? So C is out. And then D, emphasize how one chain of DNA may serve as a template to be copied during DNA replication. That is exactly on topic with what she was saying. So remember, answer from the text, don't use your own common sense, and yeah, you'll be well off. 28 is just asking about the percentages of purines in yeast. So just head over to the table here. So for yeast, and I thankfully labeled the purines here, adenine and guanine. We've got 31.3 and 18.7. So in the reverse order, here we are with C. So 28, not so bad. And then 29, do the data in the table support the author's proposed pairing of bases in DNA. So I have the pairing written out right over here with, how adenine always goes with thymine, guanine always goes with cytosine, and so on. Again, having bio really helps, right? Because you kind of remember this is drilled into your head. But yeah, going through these now. So if you look at adenine and thymine numbers, I'm just going to use a different color here. Let's use orange. So let's look at for maize. I believe that's a pronunciation. I think that's corn of some kind, but I don't know. I'm going to fact check myself here in a second. So if you look at adenine and thymine, those are both really close to 27. And then if you keep going down through here, so octopus is 33.2 and then 31.6, pretty close, right? And then for chicken, 28 basically. And then I'll use another color. I guess we'll go back to blue. So look at the guanine and cytosine percentages. See how those are really close? Like basically 23, basically 17, basically 22, right? So everything's matching up exactly the way Watson and Crick said it would. So first thing you can do is chop these guys because the data do support the fact that the pairings only happen in very specific ways because those percentages of each nucleotide are coming through pretty clearly. They're very close for the ones that are paired, right? So if you just sort of evaluate your yeses now, because for each organism, the percentage of adenine is closest to the percentage of thymine, and those are the pairings, right? And then they say guanine with cytosine, and that's the other pairing. So A is looking really good, and let's just do our due diligence and look at B as well, so we can confidently eliminate that. So yes, because adenine closest to the percentage of guanine. Those aren't the ones that are pairing, so those percentages should not be the same, and they're not. Like if you look at adenine and guanine for maize here, hoping that's a pronunciation, then they're not the same. So yeah, you can confidently say A. And then looking at 30, which of the following pairs of base percentages in sea urchin DNA provides evidence in support of the answer? So we were actually already through sort of circling the ones that are paired together. Let's go over to sea urchin here, and I'll use some black for this one. So for sea urchin, we'd want to make sure that, actually, you know what, I'll use orange because I'll stay consistent. If you look at the 32.8 and the 32.1, that's the fact that those are so close would prove the answer to the previous question. But as you can see, they don't actually offer that option. Instead, they're going with a cytosine and guanine combination of 17.7 and 17.3, which is A right there. So now, going through 31, this is a tough question because a lot of people misread it. So is the percentage of adenine in each organism's DNA the same, or does it vary? You have to be really particular about how you interpret this. That means, or this is trying to say that, is the percentage of adenine in every single organism's DNA the same, or does it vary? Well, all organisms that you can possibly think of have, different combinations of DNA that make them what they are, right? And so to account for all that variability, we must have different percentages of adenine in all these different organisms, okay? You can't have the same amount of adenine because that would mean you have the same amount of thymine, and you wouldn't have nearly as much variation in all the organisms that you can possibly think of, okay? So adenine is definitely going to vary. So for this reason, you can eliminate the ones that say the same, and just be really careful about picking your evidence here. So looking at 36 through 38, let's go down there. Adenine, for example, can occur on either chain, but when it does, it has to be with thymine, basically. That's not very strong, but let's check D and make sure that's a good one. So if we look at 41 through 45 here, so that's actually here. It follows that in a long molecule, many different permutations, this just means combinations right here, are possible. So many different combinations are possible, and it therefore seems likely that the precise sequence of bases is the code which carries the genetical information. It's just trying to say, with all the different possible percentages and orders of adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine, that's what creates all these different combinations of organisms, right? So yeah, she's saying it definitely varies, and this is definitely the stronger example. So there you go. So the fourth passage is what I call an Old English passage, okay? So it's basically written some time ago. In this case, we have 1938 by Virginia Woolf, and these are the toughest sections for a lot of kids, okay? And it's no wonder, just because the way they say things, or Yeah, the way they wrote back then was pretty verbose, pretty wordy, right? And a lot of times sentences can go on for like 7 or 8 lines. So you want to strike this weird balance where in really thick, difficult to understand parts, you're going to want to slow down and try to visualize everything that you're reading because it's going to help you decode it when it's really difficult to read. But other times, like let's say you slow down and you're focusing in on that really difficult chunk, right? And you can't seem to quite get it. Now you need to read sort of over it and try to understand the context around it so that you can sort of get through it and understand the bigger picture of what's going on. So fine-tuning that skill takes time. It takes practice, right? You have to do a few of these to sort of see what I'm talking about here. But in any case, we'll get started. Now, assuming you've read the passage here, but what she's mostly talking about is women's newfound right to work alongside men, okay? And what she's really, really concerned about, or the message she's trying to get across, is that now that women can work alongside men, they need to think very carefully about exactly how they're going to engage with that right. Like, how are they going to utilize this newfound right to work alongside men? How are they going to approach that, right? So she chooses this setting I'll just underline here, the bridge over the river Thames, because she's with a group of women and she's just having them look out over the city in the morning and watching all of these guys go to work. And she's like, see all those men going to work? Now we can join them. Now we have the right to work alongside them. So we have to think really, really carefully about exactly how we're going to use this newfound right, okay? So she chose the scene for dramatic effect, and so, the women could personally see what they are now a part of. Okay, that's going to be important sort of later on. There are lots and lots of trap answers in these questions here, which I'll point out and explain sort of how you can navigate around them. Okay, so if we head right into 32, this is a main purpose question, so we'll just go through and eliminate. So is the main purpose of the passage to emphasize the value of a tradition? No, there's no tradition here they're talking about, so chop A. Stress the urgency of an issue. Remember, what she's really concerned about is the newfound right for women to work alongside men. And the urgent thing that we have to figure out as women, she's saying, is exactly how that's going to work and how we're going to utilize that newfound right. Okay, she talks about that a lot in this whole sort of column here. Okay, but we'll get to that. So is she stressing the urgency of an issue? This works really well, because she's saying we need to think about this right now, okay, and figure this out. So we'll go on and we'll just leave B around. We'll look at C now. Highlight the severity of social divisions. A lot of people pick this, especially talented English students who are used to reading in between the lines and interpreting and getting the bigger message and that kind of stuff. But the SAT really wants you to answer from within the text without doing much interpreting or inferring of your own, okay? So even though the severity of social divisions is a background issue, certainly in this passage, it's not what she's talking about. She's saying, how do we engage with these businesses now that we can work alongside men, okay? So she's not bemoaning or complaining about the fact that men have more rights than women at that time. So you can actually chop C. And then if you look D, question the feasibility of an undertaking. Feasibility is like doability, like is it possible, right? So is she questioning whether it's possible to undertake something? No, not quite. So you can chop D and we get B here. So for 33, the central claim of the passage is that, and we'll go through, educated women face a decision about how to engage with existing institutions. This is a really strong answer. We're going to keep that around. Looking at B, women have positions of influence in underlining's not very on point this morning. So positions of influence in English society only if they give up on their traditional or give up some of their traditional roles. So a lot of people pick this answer, and I think the reason they do is they're sort of visualizing like, okay, now that women can work alongside men, they would have to give up things like housework and other responsibilities they're used to having, okay? But remember to answer from the text, not from your own inferences, your own connections or conclusions or logic. Okay, they didn't actually talk about this, so you can chop that. And then C is another trap. The male monopoly on power in English society has had grave and continuing effects. Very true, yeah, but it's not what she's discussing. She's saying, like, how exactly we can engage with existing businesses, right? So, more support for A. This is a trap, okay? If they're not actually talking about it, not the answer. D, the entry of educated women into positions of power traditionally held by men will transform those positions. So, okay, now that women are gonna hold jobs that only men once held, they're gonna transform those positions. Well, that could happen, but again, the passage wasn't talking about it, so chop D. So we have A here. And then for 34, Wolf uses the word we throughout the passage mainly to, she keeps saying we because she's sort of like sisters, you know, like the way a team captain would speak to their team, right? Just like pumping them up and reinforcing the fact that they are together. Okay, so let's go through and eliminate based upon that. So reflect the growing friendliness among a group of people. Growing friendliness is okay, but they didn't say it was growing or anything like that. There's no indication that the women are getting closer, so it's like A, no. Advance the need for candor. Candor is honesty among a group of people. She's never saying that anyone lied or anyone was being deceptive or dishonest, so no. C, establish a sense of solidarity among a group of people. Solidarity, you can pick the word solid out of that. Solidarity is unity, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So C is really strong. Keep that around. And then looking at D, reinforce the need for respect among a group of people. There was no mention of, like, we're not being respectful to one another. D's out. C. Looking at 35, according to the passage, Wolf chooses the setting of the bridge because it... This is a really popular answer to get wrong, and it's a great illustration of exactly how the SAT wants you to think. They are very, very literal, okay? So all this work you've done in English class where you're, given a poem and you have to, like, interpret and read between the lines, like, oh, the black means, like, death or something, right? Leave it all on the table, okay? This is not the way they want you to answer in the SAT reading. They want you to use the text, focus on what the author said, okay? So why did Wolf choose the setting of the bridge? It's conducive to a mood of fanciful reflection. Fanciful is like lighthearted. There's nothing really lighthearted about this. They're like really thinking about how they're going to use their newfound right to work, okay? Fanciful does not work, so A is out. And then B provides a good view of the procession of the sons of educated men. Remember I said earlier she chose the bridge because she wanted to be able to point to it to the women and be like, look, all those guys going to work, like, we're going to join them soon. So this is actually really strong. Let's eliminate the others. C, it's within sight of historic episodes to which she alludes. She's not talking about anything historical really, right? And so no. And then D, this is the one that people choose a lot. Symbolic of the legacy of past and present sons of educated men. Let's translate that into plain English so we can actually judge it properly. This is a really important tactic, okay? So when you get some flowerful, like, pretty answer like D, just translate it into common sense language and test it that way. So she chose the setting of the bridge because it's a symbol of the legacy. So a symbol of how it's a symbol of all the men who have ever worked there, their legacy. No, that doesn't work, right? That's not why she chose the bridge. She chose the bridge so that all the women could look out on the procession of educated men and notice, like, oh, we're going to go work alongside them as well. So B works well. Okay, very literal, but again, a great lesson in how SAT wants you to think. And then looking at 36 here, Wolf indicates that the procession she describes has come to have more practical influence in recent years. She never said anything about the procession becoming more practical. B has become a celebrated feature of English public life. She didn't say that, didn't talk about it. C includes all of the richest and most powerful men in England. Doesn't say that either. Has become less exclusionary. So, in other words, more people are allowed in. That's exactly what we're talking about here because women can now join that procession, right? So D is our answer here. So again, I mentioned this earlier, but with these line-based questions, don't go to the next question first and try to find which lines would help you answer 36. okay? Because there are traps in these answer options that will lead you to wrong answers in here. They support wrong answers in the previous question. The best way to do these is to very confidently answer the previous question, just like we just did. Like, we're certain it's D, right? And then find the lines that most explicitly and directly prove the answer to the previous question, okay? So it can't go like a layer deeper. One of these does, as we'll talk about in a second. And it has to be exactly on topic. It has to be proving that the procession became less exclusionary, okay? So we'll focus on that as we go through. And what I just did there, where I went back to 36, even though I just answered it, right? And reiterated the question, like, okay, it's something about the procession. And also reflected on the answer. The procession became less exclusionary before heading into this. That's going to help you focus on exactly what you're looking for in the text, okay? We're looking for evidence that the procession allowed more people in, okay? So 37, best evidence for answer the previous question. Lines 12 through 17, let's look here. There they go, our brothers who have been educated at public schools and universities, mounting those steps, passing in and out of those doors, ascending those pulpits, preaching, teaching, administering justice, practicing medicine, transacting business, making money. She's just saying there go all of our hardworking men. That's not proving that the procession became less exclusionary. So A is out. 17 to 19. It is a solemn sight always, a procession like a caravanserai crossing a desert. So she's saying, like, it's not sad, but it's like, right? That's sort of what solemn means. A caravan of men heading to work is kind of a solemn sight, or like a semi-sad sight. No, that's not proving it's less exclusionary now. And then lines 23 to 24. For there, traipsing along at the tail end of the procession, we go ourselves. That's pretty on point, okay? Because it's illustrating that now women can join men in the procession, okay? So we're going to leave C around. D is the trap I was talking about. So if we look at line 30 to 34, we too can leave the house, can mount those steps, pass in and out of those doors, make money, administer justice. And then we who now agitate these humble pens may in another century or two speak from a pulpit. So this is what I was talking about with going a layer deeper unnecessarily, okay, with what they're talking about here. So, like, yes, women are going to be allowed to work alongside men, okay, and she's talking directly about what it's going to look like when they do work alongside men, okay. But focus on what the previous question was asking about. It's about the procession and how it became less exclusionary. So these lines have to spell out that women are now joining that procession. And that was in lines 23 through 24. Because traipsing along at the tail end of the procession, we go ourselves. It's more direct evidence. Even though D is talking about the deeper issue, this is more directly spelling out the answer for 36. And that's exactly how you want to approach these evidence for the answer to the previous questions. Moving on to 38, Wolf characterizes the questions in lines 53 to 57. So if we just find those there, so 1, 2, 3. So for we have to ask ourselves, here now, do we wish to join that procession or don't we? On what terms shall we join that procession? Above all, where is it leading us, the procession of educated men? So these questions, how is she characterizing those? So she's saying, like, again, basically, do we even want to work alongside men? How are we going to work alongside men? How is this all going to work, right? She's saying it's super important that we think about this and figure this out right now. So she characterizes these questions as, are the questions themselves controversial and threatening? Weighty and unanswerable. Weighty means like heavy or important, so that actually works. Unanswerable, though, makes that wrong. So remember, one of these words can make the whole answer wrong. B is out. Momentous. A lot of people get caught on this one. Momentous means significant, okay, or important. And then pressing means urgent. So this is actually really strong because she's saying we need to think about this. Right now, it's super important. We need to figure it out. So we'll leave C around. And then provocative. Like, ooh, right? Little risque and I don't know, sort of daring or almost like taboo to talk about, right? And then mysterious. No, that's not how she characterizes them. So D is out, and we can confidently answer C, which leads us nicely into finding the lines that are support for C. Remember, you're looking for the most direct evidence of this, okay? And there's one in here that's really close to the right answer, but it doesn't quite land it, and I'll explain why. So best evidence for answer to the previous question. Let's go through and eliminate. Looking at A, lines 46 through 47, starting with we. So remember, revisit the previous question, okay? She's saying these questions we're asking ourselves about, like, how we're going to work alongside men are really important, okay? Really important, because that's what momentous means. And then pressing. So they're really important and they're really urgent. We got to figure them out right now, okay? So we're looking for the lines that spell that out. So 46 to 47. So we're here on the bridge to ask ourselves certain questions. That doesn't illustrate that they're important or urgent. So no. 48 through 49, starting with and. So, and they are very important questions. Oh, that looks good, because that's what momentous means. And we have very little time in which to answer them. That's what pressing means. So this is a very strong candidate. Let's leave that around. C. This is the trap, guys, if you look at 57. So the moment is short, meaning we don't have much time. It may last 5 years, 10 years, or perhaps only a matter of a few months longer. So this does illustrate the fact that it's pressing, but it doesn't directly spell out how important it is. Okay, it just says it's really, really urgent because we may not have much time. You might leave 57 around, or at this point chop it because you know it doesn't cover momentous. Okay, and then for D, line 62, it just says that excuse shall not serve you, madam. So if you look at the previous line here, it's saying, but you will object, you have no time to think, you have your battles to fight, your rent to pay, your bazaars to organize. She's saying, like, that's no excuse, but that doesn't illustrate that the questions about how we're going to engage with business, with, you know, working alongside men, are important and urgent. Doesn't illustrate that. B was perfect. Okay, so looking at 40, which choice most closely captures the meaning of the figurative sixpence referred to in lines 70 and 71? Let's go ahead and find that. It was thus that they won us the right to our brand new sixpence. Okay, even though we just read it, I recommend starting a couple lines before to really confidently read into the issue, okay? That way you know exactly what they're talking about. So, as you know from your own experience, and there are facts to prove it, the daughters of educated men have always done their thinking from hand to mouth, not under green lamps at study tables in the cloisters of secluded colleges. So, in other words, they've sort of had to think on their own and keep their thoughts to themselves, as opposed to doing it like at a university, right? They didn't have the right to be educated in the same way men were. So they have thought while they stirred the pot, while they rocked the cradle. It was thus that they won us the right to our brand new sixpence. The sixpence, a pence is a currency, okay? So a sixpence is a form of currency. And the form of currency she's talking about is the right to work alongside men, okay? So we'll keep that in mind as we go through here. So the sixpence is tolerance? Not really, no, it's a right, or a chance, or a currency, right? And then knowledge? No. Opportunity? Yes, it is a new opportunity, it's a new thing of value, right? And then perspective? No. So we get C for 40. Now on to 41, last question here. The range of places and occasions listed in 72 to 76. So let's look here. Let us think in offices, in omnibuses, while we're standing in the crowd watching coronations and Lord Mayor shows. Let us think in the gallery of the House of Commons, in the law courts. Let us think at baptism and marriages and funerals, right? So let's think, no matter where we are, about exactly how we're going to utilize this newfound right to work alongside men. She's saying we should be thinking everywhere and all the time, okay? No matter sort of what you're doing. So let's keep that in mind. This is mainly serves to emphasize how novel the challenge faced by women is. Novel means new, and she's not saying this is a super new issue. She's saying we need to figure it out. So A is out. Pervasive. A lot of people get caught on this word. Pervasive means widespread, which is exactly what we were talking about. So you need to be thinking everywhere. So yeah, pervasive, the need for critical reflection is. Yeah, so this is a great answer. And then C, how complex the political and social issues of the day are. This is a background issue that's definitely present, but it's not what she's highlighting. She's saying we need to figure this out no matter what you're doing. Like, no matter where you are, you need to be thinking about this. And pervasive works perfectly for that. So C, not so much. And D, how enjoyable the career possibilities are. No. So B it is. The last passage is technically a science-based passage, and it's about space mining. So we've got two authors discussing the topic of space mining, and a lot of times with these passage 1, passage 2 situations, there will be areas of the topic where the authors agree, and then there will be certain aspects of each author's argument that makes that argument unique, right? And so they kind of disagree on things or cover different points. But usually there's a little bit of overlap and then a little bit of difference, right? So what really helps, I found, before even sort of going into the questions is to summarize what each author believes in a really quick statement after reading, right? So when you read passage 1, you're like, okay, this guy is basically saying a ton of companies are exploring the possibility of mining in space, right? And then he goes on to talk about how the stuff that we get from space may end up, being brought back so that we can get a hold of things like platinum and gold and all that kind of stuff. But he also points out that they can build an off-planet economy free of any bonds from Earth, in which the materials extracted and processed from the moon and asteroids are delivered for space-based projects. So instead of bringing all this stuff back to Earth, they could just stay in space and use all these raw materials that they mine from asteroids and planets and stuff like that for space-based projects. And just, so developing like, materials or parts or landing pads or roads, as they mention here. And then they go on to talk about like, hey, what would be valuable in space? Well, water would be really valuable. And then here's some things that we could do with water, right? We could split it into oxygen and hydrogen, make it or turn it into spacecraft fuel. And then up here, they're like, oh, we could use iron, silicon, and aluminum in lunar soil to use as fuel for 3D printers or, whatever they call that. And then, so to produce spare parts or machinery. And then you can, turn it into concrete for landing pads, shelters, and roads and stuff like that. So he's making a couple different points, but like basically, whoa, space mining is awesome. And, we may bring some of it back to Earth, but we could also use it for space-based projects and utilize it sort of up there and just have a whole off-world economy going, right? Whereas passage 2 is saying, yes, space mining is very cool, but we should sort of pause for thought here. There are a couple things to consider. So one thing, and he sort of talks about it here, is we should sort of think about the consequences of polluting space, which is kind of a weird idea, right? But like if we, are producing and mining in space, like we're creating a bunch of space junk, but he's saying, this is going to be kind of a tough argument to, to persuade consumers of and companies of, because it's like no one's going to go to space and worry about all the space pollution, right? Like very few people will go up there. So he's like, that may not be, a significant argument. But then he goes on to talk about questions of the stewardship or the ownership of space materials. So he's saying like if all these companies go up and just start mining stuff from asteroids and planets and stuff like that, like how are we going to regulate that, right? So he's saying if we don't have some kind of regulatory system in place which determines, who owns what exactly and who's allowed to mine where and all that kind of stuff, then there are going to be legal battles and all this kind of stuff. So we should really be careful about how we approach space mining, as cool as it is, right? So let's get into the questions here. So in line 42, the author of passage 1 mentions several companies primarily to, so that is in lines through 9 through 17, so that's like right here. And what I like to do for these, if it's a purpose-based question, is before even looking at the answers, just head over and read the paragraph. So if you're looking, the forum comes hot on the heels of 2012 unveiling of two private asteroid mining firms. Planetary Resources of Washington says it will launch its first prospecting telescopes in 2 years, while Deep Space Industries of Virginia hopes to be harvesting metals from asteroids by 2020. Another commercial venture that sprung up in 2012, Golden Spike of Colorado, will be offering trips to the moon, including to potential lunar miners. So if you just sort of commonsensically say, like, why is he throwing out all these company names? He's just saying the idea of space mining is gaining a lot of traction, right? So there's a lot of people who are looking into it. So now we can go and look at the possible answers Is he noting the technological advances that make space mining possible? No, that's not what he's doing. Provide evidence of the growing interest in space mining. That's a really strong candidate. That's basically what we summarized, right? So we'll leave that one around there. And then C, emphasize the large profits to be made from space mining. He doesn't actually talk about that there. And then D, highlight the diverse ways to carry out space mining operations. That's not, he doesn't give specifics related to that. So D is out, and we choose B. Moving on to 43, the author of passage 1 indicates that space mining could have which positive effect? So he goes down here and he's like, okay, within a few decades, these firms may be meeting earthly demands for precious metals, such as platinum and gold, and rare earth elements for personal electronics, such as yttrium and lanthanum. So he's saying this could be really good for not just the people who are going to get them, but for Earth itself, right? And then we may even build an off-world, economy, as we talked about before. So if we look at A, it could yield materials important to Earth's economy. That's exactly what we just read. So this is a really strong answer. Let's leave that around. And then B, it could raise the value of some precious metals on Earth. He didn't actually say that. So B, no. And then C, it could create unanticipated technological innovations. Maybe so, but he didn't talk about it, so C is no. And then D, it could change scientists' understanding of space resources. Again, he didn't mention that. D is out. So A it is. And then for 44, so we answered this really confidently, so we're just looking for the lines that support this. We actually already underlined them in 18 through 22 here, so it's, again, revisit this previous question, even though you just answered it, right? Passage 1 guy is saying space mining could have which positive effect? It could yield materials important to Earth's economy. So these lines have to spell out that we could get materials that are really good for Earth's economy. So looking at 18 through 22, within a few decades, these firms may be meeting earthly demands for precious metals, such as platinum and gold, and the rare earth elements vital for personal electronics, such as yttrium and lanthanum. So that is pretty much spelling that out. So A is really good. Let's do our due diligence, though, go through B, C, and D. And then so 24 through 28, starting with they also hope to build an off-world economy, off-planet economy, free of any bonds with Earth, in which the materials extracted and processed from the moon and asteroids are delivered for space-based projects. Does that illustrate this point exactly, that it could yield materials important to Earth's economy? No, it doesn't. So it's slightly off topic in that regard. You can chop B. And then C, 29 through 30. In this scenario, water mined from other worlds could become the most desired commodity. Is that illustrating that it could yield materials important to Earth's economy? No, it's not. And then 41 through 44. Companies are eyeing the iron, silicon, and aluminum in lunar soil and asteroids, which could be used in 3D printers to make spare parts or machinery. This part is really tricky, okay, because in this stage of the passage, and this is why you want to read the passage before answering the questions, right? He's not talking about using all of these materials for something on Earth. He's talking about using that stuff in space, in the closed sort of off-planet economy they're talking about. So they would just keep the materials in space and use them to construct like landing pads on the moon or like roads on the moon or whatever. This was not for Earth-based stuff, and this was about stuff that was important to Earth's economy. So that one is out, and we can choose A confidently. 45 is a word and context question, so we don't even look at the answers. We go over to demands in line 19 and replace it with our own synonym. And once we have our own synonym in place, then we'll go and evaluate these answer options. It's the most confident way you can answer based upon the context it was used in the sentence, okay? So if we go to line 19 here, within a few decades, these firms may be meeting earthly demands. Let's come up with our own word for that. Earthly demands for precious metals. So probably requests, I guess, right? Demands is even better because you can pretty much understand what they're talking about, but like basically requests, okay? And then going through here, demands most nearly means offers. Requests is not the same thing as offers, right? So no. Requests, claims, no, that's like claiming ownership, no. Inquiries or questions, like no. Desires, requests and desires and demands mean the same thing, right? So there we go, D. And then 46, what function does the discussion of water in lines 35 through 40 serve in passage 1. So let's head over there and remind ourselves. You do want to revisit these even though you've just you've just read the whole passage, right? Go back, reread, and just sort of come up with your own sort of interpretation of what they're saying before heading over to 46's answer. So 35 through 40. So water ice from the moon's poles could be sent to astronauts on the International Space Station for drinking or as a radiation shield. Splitting water into oxygen and hydrogen makes spacecraft fuel, so ice-rich asteroids could become interplanetary refueling stations. So these are different ways that water could be used in space. And if you look at the previous paragraph here, in this scenario, water mined from other worlds could become the most desired commodity. In the desert, what's worth more, a kilogram of gold or a kilogram of water? Asked Chris Zachney of Honeybee Robotics in New York. Gold is useless, water will let you live. And then they move on to talk about the different water uses in space. So let's head over here. What does that discussion of water serve, in passage 1? So in A, it continues an extended comparison. An extended comparison is something like spending a whole paragraph talking about how your love for your wife is like the sun. That's a comparison, right? Love to the sun, and it's not what's happening here. So A is out. And then B, it provides an unexpected answer to a question raised in the previous paragraph. So this isn't unexpected. That's where B fails, okay? Because it's saying like water can be super valuable in space, even more valuable than gold, and it moves on to give examples for why. So it's not unexpected. And then C, it offers hypothetical examples. This works perfectly, supporting a claim, right, that water would be really valuable made in the previous paragraph. So C works really well. D, it examines possible outcomes of a proposal. So there was no proposal in the previous paragraph. It was just a claim about water, that water was more valuable. So because it's not a proposal, that one word makes that whole thing wrong. So D is out, and we can answer C. And then looking at 47, the central claim of passage 2, so this is the guy who was like, we really need to regulate space mining, right? Is that space mining has positive potential, because he did say it was cool, right? But it will end up encouraging humanity's reckless treatment of the environment. He does point out that there's a risk of polluting space, but he's not saying that space mining would actually encourage humanity's reckless treatment of the environment. It's not going to amplify it, right? So A is out. And then B, its effects should be thoughtfully considered before it becomes a reality. He does say we need to be careful about how we approach this. So B is actually really strong. We'll keep that around. And then C, such potential may not include replenishing key resources that are disappearing on Earth. He just didn't talk about this, so no. And then D, experts disagree about the commercial viability of the discoveries it could yield. No one here was saying that experts are saying like, oh, we couldn't use the materials we find in space. No one said that. So D is out and B. And then as used in line 68, again, another word in context question. Don't even look at the answers. Go and use your own synonym for hold in line 68. So honing in on that here. History suggests that those will be hard lines to hold. So what are we talking about here? If we go back to line 60, so we read down into this is really good strategy. Part of this is about principles. Some will argue that space's magnificent desolation is not ours to despoil, just as they argue that our own planet's poles should remain pristine. Others will suggest that glutting ourselves on space's riches is not an acceptable alternative to developing more sustainable ways of earthly life. This is an argument against space pollution, as we were talking about, right? History suggests that those will be hard lines to hold, or difficult sort of boundaries to lay and just keep, okay? So this basically means keep, and it's so funny. I want to use the word maintain, right? Like hard lines to maintain. They're basically drawing a line in the sand, like you can't pollute space, and they're like, that's kind of difficult to hang on to, like as an argument, right? It's just not great. So as used in line 68, hold most nearly means maintain, right? That's really strong. A grip, like a physical grip, no, that's not how they're talking about this, right? And then they're not talking about restraining the lines. They're talking about maintaining an argument or preserving it. You could say preserving. So these are hard lines to preserve. And grip definitely doesn't mean preserve. Restrain or to hold back, no. To withstand, no. not the same thing as preserve, right? Notice how all of these are synonyms for the word hold. Okay, that's why it's so important to go back in here and come up with your own synonym, because these are all technically synonyms for the word hold, but the only way it was actually used here was as maintain. Okay, so 49. Which statement best describes the relationship between the passages? So when asked a question like this, again, it really helps to summarize what each guy basically thought. So in the first one, he's like, wow, space mining is really on the rise. We could use space mining to get stuff like gold and platinum and yttrium and lanthanum, so all these, precious metals for Earth, right? But then he's also saying, like, we might use water and these other materials for an off-planet economy where we just use them to create, like, parts and, landing pads and roads and space stations and all that kind of stuff. So they may not even bring that stuff back to Earth, they may just sort of use it up there. So this guy's super positive about space mining and talking about all the ways we could use it, both on Earth and off Earth. And then passage 2 is saying, like, yeah, space mining is really, really cool, but some people are really concerned about space pollution. But, even though that argument may not hold up, we still have the issue of regulations to talk about, right? So if we don't specifically designate, who owns what asteroid or what piece of, the moon or something like that, who's allowed to mine what and what all these, like, basically who everything belongs to. Like, okay, Russia gets this piece, the United States gets this piece. So having everything spelled out very clearly with specific regulations to avoid, like, legal battles and stuff like that. So he's saying, yes, space mining is awesome, but we have to be really careful about how we regulate it. Okay, so that's basically the relationship between, or that's the two passages summarized. Now we can look at the relationships they propose. So if we look at A, Passage 2 refutes the central claim advanced in Passage 1. Central claim in Passage 1 is like space mining is going to be, it's really on the rise and it's going to be very useful, and there's just a lot of ways we could utilize materials found in space. Is Passage 2 arguing against the usefulness of space mining? No, he's not. So refutes is too strong. And then Passage 2 illustrates the phenomenon described in more general terms. So is he basically summarizing Passage 1? No. And then C, Passage 2 argues against the practicality of the proposals put forth in Passage 1. Passage 2 never says that we can't utilize space materials. He's just saying we have to regulate it. So C is out. And then D, Passage 2 expresses reservations. In this case, reservations is used as concerns. So Passage 2 has concerns about developments discussed in Passage 1. That's absolutely true, because Passage 2 is saying, yes, space mining's cool, but we do have to regulate it very carefully. So D is good there. And then for 50, the author of Passage 2 would most likely respond to the discussion of the future of space mining in Passage 1 by claiming that such a future. So again, we've summarized these. We're ready for this question. So this future of space mining, Passage 2 guy would say, who remember was all for the regulations, is inconsistent with the sustainable use of space resources. He never made that argument, so no. B, it will be difficult to bring about in the absence of regulations. That's exactly what he said. B is really strong. We'll leave it. And then C, cannot be attained without technologies that do not yet exist. He didn't point that out either. D, seems certain to affect Earth's economy in a negative way. Not really. He's saying there's a risk of space pollution, right? But that's not really Earth's economy. And then he doesn't point out that it's going to crash the economy if we don't have these regulations, right? He's just saying there would be a lot of legal battles and, just a bunch of turmoil over it. But this is too extreme for that. So B is better, right? And then if we look at 51 here, best evidence for the answer to the previous question, let's go through and sort of figure out where he most directly says this, right? So if we look at lines 60 to 63, part of this is about principles. Some will argue that space's magnificent desolation is not ours to despoil, just as they argue that our own planet's poles should remain pristine. This is not saying that space mining should be heavily regulated, or else, we face a bunch of legal turmoil, right? So A is out. B, 74 to 76. So there's also the emerging off-world economy to consider. The resources that are valuable in orbit and beyond may be different to those we prize on Earth. No, he's just saying, right, that the materials we care about on Earth may be different than the ones we care about in space, which is not saying that we really need these regulations. It's not directly spelling that out. Let's look at 81 to 83. One speaker at last week's space mining forum in Sydney, Australia, concluded with a plea that regulation should be avoided. The author does not agree with this guy. So this space miner is thinking like, hey, we shouldn't have anything regulated, but that's not what the author of passage 2 believes, right? So nope. And then lines 85 to 87. Without consensus, claims will be disputed, investments risky, and then gains made insecure. This is exactly what the author was saying in terms of consequences of not having regulations in place before space mining. So D is perfect. And then last one, 52. Which point about the resources that will be highly valued in space, specifically in space, is implicit in passage 1 and explicit in passage 2? Implicit means that it is implied, which means not said directly, okay? Explicit is the opposite, where it is actually spelled out, like basically word for word, right? So first question we can ask ourselves as we go through and eliminate here is, like, did both passages actually say these options that we're evaluating, right? In some kind of way. So passage 1 would have implied it, but not directly said it. Passage 2 would have said it out loud. So for A, and this is regarding resources, by the way. So the resources may be different resources from those that are valuable on Earth. Yeah, we did talk about that actually, right? Because this guy points out in the desert, what's worth more? A kilogram of gold or a kilogram of water? So on Earth, like, gold is obviously worth more, right? But in space, water would be worth more, and we have all these potential uses for it in space. So that was sort of implied, right? That the resources in space, the value of those may be different from those on Earth, right? And then if you look in line 74 here, the resources that are valuable in orbit and beyond may be different to those we prize on Earth. That's literally what this guy was saying, but explicitly, right? So this is implicitly said here and explicitly said here. And that's exactly what they wanted. So we're pretty sure it's A, but we'll go through. And then, so resources will be valuable only if they can be harvested cheaply. Neither one of these guys talked about the cost of harvesting. So this is no. And then C, they're likely to be primarily precious metals. No, not necessarily, because we're talking about the value of water in space over here. So they didn't both say that. So C is no. And then D, they may increase in value as those same resources become rare on Earth. This is a common sense trap. That could be true, but neither author actually talked about that. So D is out, and your answer is A. Okay guys, so first, writing and language test. Now, the way you're going to approach this is a little bit different than the way you go about the reading, because for these, you're actually going to want to answer the questions as you read, and you do need to read these passages because there are author's craft questions like you're seeing here on 2 and 5. Now, you're not going to be able to answer those properly unless you have read the passage, okay? So as exciting as it is, you are going to have to read about Greek yogurt, right? So just go ahead and start at the beginning. Read. And by the way you're going to want to go about these videos is go ahead and, read and attempt the passages on your own. And then once you're done and you have questions about ones you got wrong, or if you just want to go over it together, that's when you start the video. Just because I'm going to assume that you have read all this and you're familiar with the passage and stuff. So in any case, let's jump right in. Heading up to number 1 here. Given these solutions as well as the many health benefits of the food, the advantages of Greek yogurt outdo the potential drawbacks of its production. So this is a word choice question. So is outdo appropriate here? You're trying to establish the relationship between advantages and drawbacks. Would you say the advantages outdo the drawbacks? Not really. That's kind of like saying they outperform them, and it's not really people we're talking about here, right? It's advantages versus disadvantages. So you can chop A for that reason. And also chop C just because outperform is basically a synonym for outdo, right? And then if you look at defeat, so do advantages defeat the drawbacks? Not really. Again, this is more so a word you use when you're describing two people, like one defeats another or something like that, right? Now, outweigh just means the advantages are more significant than the drawbacks, which is a perfect fit here. So there we go, D. Now, 2, which choice provides the most relevant detail? This is a really tricky question, actually. It gets a lot of people. Now, One of the main bits of advice we have to sort of focus on is when you're doing grammar questions like 1 and 3 and 4, you're just looking for the nicest sounding but also grammatically correct plugin, right? You have to be ready to dramatically switch gears when you get to an author's craft question like 2 or 5, okay? Because with these, you actually have to accomplish whatever the question is specifically asking for. So this time it's what's most relevant, okay? So we do have to go in and see exactly what the paragraph is talking about so we can choose an answer that's in keeping with that same theme, right? It doesn't distract much from it. So let's get over here to the beginning of this paragraph. The main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. Because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces larger amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. To address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses for acid whey. They can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement, and people can make their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt. So, as you can see, the paragraph is really talking about how they need to get rid of acid whey as a byproduct of making Greek yogurt, okay? So that's what the whole paragraph's theme is really discussing, like how to get rid of acid whey, okay? So we have to choose an option that really sticks with that, okay? Now, if you look at this, they can make their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt. That's not really talking about how to get rid of acid whey. So A is out, and then B, they can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement and convert it into gas to use as fuel in electricity production. So this is a way to get rid of acid whey, which makes B a really strong candidate. We should leave that around. And then C, they can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement, while sweet whey is more desirable as a food additive for humans. Not so much, okay? It's not talking about how to get rid of it. And then D, this is the one that a lot of people choose. So they can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement, which provides an important element of their diet. So this sounds really nice when you plug it in, but the paragraph isn't about establishing proper livestock diet, okay? So it's about getting rid of acid whey, and B is just much stronger in that regard. So there we go, okay? Looking at 3, heading all the way down here. If it's improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. This is right the way it is because waterways in this sense is just being used as plural. There's no possession going on here. So we don't want any of these apostrophe options. So you just chop these guys. Now in terms of tense, if it's improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways. So this is present tense, and that's actually what we want. Could have polluted waterways isn't as strong. Okay, so there we go. No change. And then down here, they're just trying to make a list. Yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials. You just use commas to separate elements in a list. So it is just C. Okay. And then looking down at 5. So 5 is what's called a sentence placement question. And there's a really, really important strategy you're going to want to use for these. So I'm just going to write out sentence placement. What you're going to want to do here is look at the sentence that they're proposing, to move, right? So sentence 5 should be placed. Go to sentence 5. By the way, a lot of people get turned around with how to identify sentence 5. They think wait, is this sentence 5 back here? No, this is question number 5. See the black box here corresponds to question 5. Sentence 5 is right here. So there's sentence 5. If it's improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. So here's what happens if it's improperly introduced into the environment. So notice how I went and I read sentence 5 first. You'll want to do that and get sort of a very common sense summary of the sentence in your head. Okay, they're talking about what happens if acid whey is improperly introduced into the environment. So hold that thought in your mind, right? So I'll just sort of represent this visually. You go and read sentence 5. And then you're going to want to go to the earliest place in the paragraph where they offer to plug this sentence in. which is actually not where it is now. It's after sentence 1. Okay, so if we go to sentence 1, what we're going to do is read sentence 1, and then we're going to go and read sentence 5. And a lot of people do this already, right? Where they'll make sure that like there's a nice transition, and logical fluidity from 1 to 5. But what most people forget to do is read sentence 2 afterwards. Because if you're going to wedge sentence 5 in between 1 and 2, there has to be a perfect like chronological sense to this, and again, a logical fluidity between all 3 sentences, not just from 1 to 5, but from 1 to 5 to 2. And you're going to go and test all these and choose the best option, okay, what makes the most sense. So make sure you do test all the options, because some of them can feel like they can work, right? But then once you hit that right answer, you'll really realize like, okay, that's where it should be. Okay, so you'll see here. Now, looking at 1, the main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. So going down to sentence 5 now. If it's improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, right? So if you look at sentence 2, because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, it produces a lot of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. It wouldn't say sentence 5 before it says sentence 2, right? So we can chop B. And then after sentence 2, because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces larger amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. And then going down to sentence 5 now, if it's improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways. So sentence 2 ends with, oh, it's really hard to get rid of this acid whey. And then sentence 5 says, if it's improperly introduced, here are all the bad things that can happen, right? So let's go to sentence 3 now. To address the problem of disposal, so this is actually perfect the way this is going. From 2 to 5 to 3. We just saw a really nice logical progression of ideas, okay? So after sentence 2 is a really strong candidate. Let's check out 3 and also where it is now just to sort of eliminate. So after sentence 3, let's look at sentence 3. To address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses for acid whey. Then we'd go to sentence 5. If it's improperly introduced into the environment, you wouldn't say to address the problem of disposal and then after that say if it's improperly introduced into the environment, here's what'll happen, right? You would say this before. So it doesn't make sense for it to go there. We could chop sentence 3, and then we'll also look at where it is now just to make sure it doesn't belong there, right? So notice how back up in sentence 3, they've already said to address the problem of disposal. And then if you leave it here, they sort of like go off topic here. They can add it to livestock feed as a protein, blah, blah, blah. And then they come back to talking about it if it's improperly introduced into the environment. It doesn't work as well as having this just go after sentence 2. Number 6 is a little unusual in that it actually does require you to keep reading through the passage to see if this sentence that they're talking about here is actually a proper transition from the previous paragraph and a good introduction to this paragraph. So if you remember, the previous paragraph left off talking about, ways that they have to get rid of acid whey because it's difficult to dispose of and all that kind of stuff, and the environmental conservation sort of associated with getting rid of acid whey. So if you look at what this is saying, though these conservation methods can be costly and time-consuming, they're well worth the effort. Like, okay, they're actually mentioning the conservation methods, like getting rid of acid whey, that they were just discussing in the previous paragraph. So this actually looks pretty good, right? But let's keep reading and see sort of what they're talking about in this paragraph and see if this is a proper intro sentence. So nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food. It's an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves to be a digestive aid, and it contains few calories in its unsweetened, low and non-fat forms. I didn't correct these guys because just assuming you're reading ahead, right? But it's just saying it's worth the effort to get rid of acid whey because Greek yogurt's such a healthy food, right? So this is actually a pretty good sentence. Now let's just go through and evaluate. So should we delete that sentence? Yes, because it does not provide a transition from the previous paragraph. Well, it actually does, because it mentions the conservation methods that were discussed in the previous paragraph and then illustrates, why they're actually worth it, because they're talking about how nutritious it is after that. So A is actually out. So A, no. And then B, because it fails to support the main argument of the passage as introduced in the first paragraph. So fails to support the main argument. That's not necessarily true, right? So B is out. And then C, no, because it continues the explanation of how acid whey can be disposed of safely. That's not what they're talking about in this paragraph, so that's not why it should be kept, right? If you look at D, no, because it sets up the argument in the paragraph for the benefits of Greek yogurt. And that's exactly what they're doing. So D is good. Now, if we look down here at 7, it is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves to be a digestive aid. That doesn't sound very good, right? We can just cross that off right now. Serves as a digestive aid. Sounds good. Serves like a digestive aid. Serves for a digestive aid. This one you can do pretty much by ear. Serves like, serves for. No, it serves as, okay? So this here we have a tense issue because this is a verb. So we're picking the proper tense of the verb contain. And this is actually going to have to match up with another word in the sentence, another verb, right? It's going to be parallel structure with serves. So it is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves as a digestive aid, and contains. So there we go, because serves and contains need to be in parallel structure because it's a list of verbs pertaining to Greek yogurt. Okay, it serves as a digestive aid and contains calories in its unsweetened low, or a few calories, right? So there we go. And then for 9, this is a transition word from the previous sentence to the next sentence, okay? And a lot of people sort of answer these kind of loosely. They're like, oh, well, I just sort of pick whatever sounds good, right? But on the SAT, they're going to want you to very closely analyze the relationship between the previous sentence and the next sentence, because only one of these is actually right, okay? So we'll talk about when you can use each one. Now, if it's just saying also, it means they're about to make a side point, okay? In other words, means they're going to rephrase what they just said. Therefore means because of the previous sentence, the next sentence happens, right? And then D, for instance, just basically means for example. So let's reread the previous sentence here. Again, nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food. It's an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves as a digestive aid, and contains few calories in its unsweetened, low and non-fat forms. Greek yogurt is slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates than conventional yogurt is. That's my son, sorry. And then it goes, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay satiated for longer periods of time. Notice how the previous sentence is talking about sugar and carbohydrates, and then the next one is talking about protein, okay? So they're not actually continuing a discussion about sugar and carbs. They're making another separate point about protein. So you wouldn't want to say in other words, because they're not rephrasing anything. It's not a therefore, because this is a totally separate point they're making. And then it's not a for instance, because it's not for example, right? It's just also. So it was perfect the way it was. Now, moving on to this here, satiated. A lot of people don't know what this word means, but it's a good opportunity to sort of figure out what you would do if you don't know what a word means, okay? And the answer is don't eliminate it. Keep it around for now, because that could be the answer. Like, you don't know if it's satiated or not, okay? So I'm just going to assume you don't know what it means, and we'll sort of leave it around. So also, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay satiated for longer periods of time. So if we just sort of replace this with our own word, they just mean full, right? Helping people stay full or satisfied for longer periods of time. A lot of people choose fulfilled here. Again, we're leaving no change around. We're leaving satiated around because we don't know what it means. So a lot of people choose fulfilled, but fulfilled is more so in like a life's purpose kind of way. It doesn't really work here. It doesn't mean literally full the way you are with food, okay? So you can chop that for that reason. Complacent, you might not know what this means either, but complacent just means that you are, you sort of kick back and relax because you're not worried, right? So a lot of times it's used as a sports analogy, like a team, if they're up like 5-0, they'll get complacent and the other team might come back and actually win because the originally winning team, was getting sort of lazy or complacent, right? So that's definitely not what it's meaning here. So C is out. And then D, sufficient. Helping people stay sufficient or enough for longer periods of time, that doesn't really make sense. So you can see how you can actually eliminate words that you do know all the way until you're left with the one option which happens to be the word that you don't know. In this case, you can pick that really confidently. Satiated means satisfied, by the way. Sort of like not overeating at Thanksgiving dinner, but just like happily full. Okay, so satiated is a great pick here. Last one. Going down here, we have to figure out sort of how to link these sentences. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, therefore farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods of producing the food. So this is weird. A lot of people don't like starting the sentence with because, but I'm going to write out a quick example here just showing that it's okay. So first, the game was canceled because it was raining. Simple enough, okay? You can actually start a sentence with because if you just flip these clauses. So you can say, because it was raining, the game was canceled. Notice how if I start the sentence with the because clause, it has to end in a comma right here. That's exactly what happens here. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods of producing the food. So there you go. So 12 is the first question that asks you to correctly interpret some data here in this graph. So you're just picking the one that represents this accurately, okay? Now if you go here, it's saying the average daily low temperatures. That's really important because if you look at the key here, average daily low is the solid line, and then this is measured in degrees Fahrenheit. So let's just sort of test each one of these. Can drop to as low as 20 degrees. So on the low solid line here, it actually gets all the way down to 12. So as low as 20 doesn't work. So A is out. And then drops to 12 degrees Fahrenheit. That matches exactly what we have here, so we'll leave that around. To their lowest point on December 13th. December 13th would be like here. This is not the lowest the graph gets, right? That's out. And then D, to 10 degrees Fahrenheit and stay there for months. That would look like this. It'd be like a flat line all the way across. So definitely not that. Okay, so let me just get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so B it is. And then heading over to 13, we're just combining sentences here, which means you're trying to pick the smoothest, most concise transition at this point here, okay? Now, notice how wordy some of these options are. Some of these are grammatically correct, so B and C would be fine grammatically, but they're not as smooth and concise, short and sweet as A is, okay? So it is going to be A. You would need a comma here for D, so for that reason, D is out. 14 is another transition word question. Now, for these, remember, you have to analyze the relationship between the previous sentence and the next sentence. You just can't, or you can't just pick what sounds good, okay? So, noticing the previous sentence here. Typically, the ice sheet begins to show evidence of thawing in late summer, following several weeks of higher temperatures, if we plug in the right grammatically correct, concise transition here, right? So, typically, it happens in late summer. And then notice how we have an option for however. Really, really important advice here. If they give you an option to plug in however, you'll want to go and try this first because however options are really, really difficult to see if that's the proper transition word a lot of times, okay? Because if you're not expecting the previous sentence to contrast with the next sentence, then you have to read it with the however plugged in as if it's supposed to be there. And I would just go and try that first, like out of all these options, okay? So typically, the ice sheet begins to show evidence of thawing in late summer. However, in the summer of 2012, virtually the entire Greenland ice sheet underwent thawing at or near its surface by mid-July, the earliest date on record. This is a perfect use for however, because usually it happens in late summer, but this time it was mid-July, the earliest date on record, so however is great. And these other options don't work because they do not illustrate that contrast that we're seeing here. Okay, so it is B. And then 15, we're just picking the correct way you would express this descriptive clause about Jason Box. So it says, but Jason Box, an associate professor of geology at Ohio State, we need that comma here to enclose this descriptive clause about Jason Box. And this option does that successfully here. Okay, so it is C. And then looking at 16, this is a proper use of a colon, as you're going to see. So Jason Box believes that another factor added to the early thaw, the dark snow problem. Notice how they're setting up the entire sentence to announce what this factor is. It's like it was another factor, colon, the dark snow problem. Okay, this is when you use colons. It's when you're setting up the entire sentence to announce or define or declare something. And this is a perfect use of that exact scenario. One more thing, guys. About 14 here, a lot of people don't know what as such or moreover mean, like as transition words. So I just wanted to point that out. So as such is pretty weird. It basically means intrinsically or essentially. So if you used it here, it would be saying, typically the ice sheet begins to show evidence of thawing in late summer. As such, or considering this fact, right? And that doesn't really work here because they're pointing out that it happened in mid-July, the earliest date on record, so as such really doesn't work. And then, moreover, this is an important one. I would write this down if you don't know this one. It means additionally, okay? So it's when, you'd use it when you are making a point that is sort of a side point of what you already said, okay? So basically, like, I was so short on time yesterday that I wasn't able to finish my homework. Moreover, I didn't eat dinner. So it's sort of catapulting off of what you already said, but it is a side point, but it's related, right? And in any case, because neither of these options are contrast words the way however is, D won't work either. So there you go. Okay, so 17. According to Box, a leading Greenland expert, tundra fires in 2012 from as far away as North America produced great amounts of soot. Some of it drifted over Greenland, blah, blah, blah. Notice that pause there. If you're going to say some of it, you can't have a comma here. This creates what's called a comma splice, which is where you used a comma when you should have used either a period or a semicolon to complete the sentence, okay? So what you need here, if you're just forced to keep this comma, is some of which. Okay, these other options create comma splices as well. So some of it drifted, some soot drifted, or some drifted. You would need a period in every case there, or a semicolon or something like that. But yeah, C, if you're forced to use the comma, is perfect. So the second one here, 18, some of which drifted over Greenland. I'm going to underline drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke and then fell. So this is actually perfect the way it is because it's parallel structure with the word drifted. So that's exactly what you want. Okay, if you have a list or a comparison between these verbs, then you need to have those verbs in parallel structure. So since this is fixed as drifted, this needs to be also in past tense as fell. Okay, and then over here, we're picking the correct version of the possessive pronoun here. So if we look, scientists have long known that soot particles facilitate melting by darkening snow and ice. These are the things that it's darkening, limiting its ability to reflect the sun's rays. This one gets a lot of people because we have two singular nouns, and then it says limiting its ability. So it's kind of sounds right because the number that you're thinking in the back of your mind of the noun is singular, but it's not. It's two singular items which together make plural. So you can't say its. And by the way, this isn't the correct version of the possessive pronoun its. So its, just while we're, whoops, wrong question. Its with an apostrophe can only be used as the contraction of it is. The its version like this without the apostrophe is possessive, which seems kind of weird because all the possessive cases that we think of with regular nouns, like the dog's tail, you have an apostrophe there, right? But not with the pronoun, possessive pronoun its, okay? So that's a good thing to keep in mind here. Now, because it's snow and ice, and it's plural, we're trying to talk about their ability. So this is the proper form of their. This is a their, which is like a place, right? So T-H-E-I-R. So there we go. And then this is a really tricky question for most people. So which best completes the description of a self-reinforcing cycle? Make sure you switch out of that grammar mode where it's just like I'm picking the nicest sounding, grammatically correct plugin, right? When you're doing an author's craft question like this, because you have to accomplish exactly what they're asking for. So you'd want to pause here and say, what is a self-reinforcing cycle? Well, self-reinforcing means it sort of sustains itself. So the last step of the cycle should be leading back to the first step so that it keeps going. It's self-reinforcing. It keeps going and going and going, right? This means we need to figure out what that first step is so that we can ensure the plugin that we use leads back to that first step. So the result is a self-reinforcing cycle. As the ice melts, there's that first step. The land and water under the ice become exposed, and since land and water are darker than snow, the surface absorbs even more heat, which leads to additional melting because that is the first step here. So that's what you want, okay? And then in 21 here, the pattern box observed in 2012 may repeat itself again. Repeating itself again is redundant because if you just say repeat itself, that indicates that it is going to happen again. You don't need to say repeat itself again. So this ends up being B. That's all you need, right? And then the rest is just sort of wordy. Now, if you look here with 22, this is a sentence placement question. So again, you're starting at the earliest point in the paragraph where they'll allow you to plug it in, or they'll offer a chance to plug it in, right? Which in this case would be here. So, and even before that, look at the sentence that they're thinking about moving, which would be this guy. Read this and summarize it in your head, okay? So you can sort of grasp the main idea and be ready to plug it into these different places they're offering. Box is currently organizing an expedition to gather this crucial information. So the previous sentence must be mentioning whatever this crucial information is. That's going to be our main strategy in figuring this out, okay? So he's going to, organize an expedition to gather this crucial info. Okay, so when we're going to test sentence one, we're going to read sentence one, and then it's saying, you'll plug it in after. So read sentence one first, then go over and read sentence four. And again, most people remember to make sure there's a nice transition between 1 and 4, but a lot of people will forget you also have to read sentence 2 afterwards and make sure there's a perfectly logical, chronological, perfect sense-making transition between all 3 of these sentences, okay? Not just 1 to 4, but 1 to 4 to 2. So you're going to have to test that. Now, I'm going to save you guys some time just because it takes a while to go through these and why every single one is wrong, okay? But the 2 most popular answers here are where it is now and then after sentence 5. So again, remember we're using that crucial information mention to really help us here. So let's just test where it is now because that's earlier in the paragraph. So the pattern box observed in 2012 may repeat itself with harmful effects on the Arctic ecosystem. There's no indicator that these effects need to be researched. They already know what the effects are, okay? So that's why it's not A. Let's look at why it's D after sentence 5. The next step for Box and his team is to travel to Greenland, okay, think expedition, to perform direct sampling of the ice in order to determine just how much of the soot is contributing to the melting of the sheet. Box is currently organizing an expedition to gather that crucial information. So that's why D works perfectly. Okay, so 23, heading down here, it says the novelty of this comfortable work from home life, however, soon got worn off quickly. And if you notice, quickly is actually fixed. You can't get rid of that. So if you look at the options here, was promptly worn off quickly. Promptly and quickly mean the same thing. So this is redundant. So you can chop B. And then C also includes promptly. So you can chop that as well. And then if you look between soon got worn off quickly and just wore off quickly is way better because the soon is redundant. So A is out and it is D. Now heading down here with 24, notice how they start the sentence with a descriptive clause, okay? So the reader has no idea who or what is doing this. Whatever they're talking about has to come immediately after the comma. So having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems, like who is frustrated, right? It's the narrator. And that means I needs to come right after the comma because I is the one who's being described here. So you can go right away down to this. And then for 25, it was during this time that I read an article into, or read an article about, or upon, or for. It's definitely not read an article into. Read an article about works. Read an article upon co-working? No. Read an article for co-working? No. So it is B. And then heading over here. So contrary to popular belief, you don't need a comma after such as. A lot of times there'll be a comma beforehand, but just for example, right, as another sentence we could sort of look at, let's say I said, I enjoy many sports. That's what this is. So I enjoy many sports, such as hockey, basketball, and soccer. So if you notice where the pause is, I enjoy many sports, such as hockey, basketball, and soccer. Notice how there is no pause after the such as right here, so you don't want any punctuation there at all, actually. So this was perfect the way it was because they don't have that punctuation after the such as. So 26 is A. And then heading down here, we have to look at the link between these two sentences because the way it is now, it says in these locations, however, right? So let's see if these two sentences are actually contrasting here. The spaces are usually stocked with standard office equipment, such as photocopiers, printers, and fax machines. The spaces often include small meeting areas and larger rooms for hosting presentations. This is just sort of a side point, okay? It's not a however, because the next sentence isn't disagreeing with the previous sentence or contrasting with the previous sentence in any way. So the however doesn't work here. And then in addition to equipment, that's a nice transition because it's just sort of setting up that also that we're expecting to have here. So B looks good. And then looking at C, for these reasons, not really, because this is just another thing that these co-working spaces have, right? So no. And then likewise doesn't work because the way you use likewise is it's designed to show reciprocation. So like if I say, I threw a ball at my sister, likewise, she threw a ball at me. That's kind of how you use likewise, and it's not appropriate here because, again, we're just making a side point that's better illustrated by an also, or in this case, in addition to equipment. So there you go, B. Now for 28, when the writer's considering deleting something, the first test that you want to do is just whether the sentence included that's considered, for deletion here is actually relevant or not. And it'll really jump out if it's not. So if you read it here, we were just talking all about, what co-working spaces include. They've got standard office equipment and then small meeting areas and stuff. And then it randomly says the cost of launching a new co-working business in the US is estimated to be approximately $58,000. That's kind of random, right? We didn't exactly need to say that at the very end of this paragraph about what co-working spaces have, right? So we definitely know it shouldn't be kept. So you can chop these guys. And then you just want to choose the option that illustrates that it's irrelevant, right? So if you look at C, it blurs the paragraph's main focus. That works perfectly. And if you compare it to D, repeats information that has been provided in an earlier paragraph. They didn't say this before, so D is out. Okay, so moving on to 29. It says, at this point, the writer wants to add specific information that supports the main topic of the paragraph. So that cues us to go over here and see what they're actually talking about in the topic sentence of the paragraph. What most caught my interest, though, was a quotation from someone who described co-working spaces as melting pots of creativity. So we want to choose an option here that actually discusses creativity specifically and how co-working spaces can benefit that, right? So going down here, which choice most effectively completes the sentence with relevant and accurate information based on the graph above? So looking at no change, it says 64% of respondents noted that co-working spaces prevented them from completing tasks in a given time. This isn't talking about creativity. So A is out. And then B, 71% of respondents indicated that using a co-working space increased their creativity. So that's really strong. We'll keep that around. And then looking at C, respondents credited co-working spaces with giving them 74% of their ideas relating to business. Okay, but not really talking about creativity, right? So C is out. Looking at D, respondents revealed that their ability to focus on their work improved by 12%. So again, okay, but not talking about creativity. So D is out, and then B is your answer. 30 deals with who versus whom, and this is a really popular issue for kids, but you can use this sort of quick and dirty trick where just ask yourself if the person in question is doing the verb or if the verb is happening to that person. So in this case, let me use an example before getting over to this here. Let's say you were saying, who hit the ball? That's perfect because the person in question is doing the verb. They're doing the hitting, right? But if you're asking about the person that was hit by the ball, you would say whom did the ball hit? So that would be a perfect use of whom. Now here, It's the people who are using. So people who use. So there you go. Heading over to 31. The writer wants to add the following sentence to the paragraph. After filling out a simple registration form and taking a quick tour of the facility, I took a seat at a table and got right to work on my laptop. So you're just asking yourself, like, chronologically, when would it make the most sense for this to happen? Okay, so it would make sense that he's already picked out a facility, right? And he's already arrived there, and he filled out a registration form, and now he's like sort of getting into it, right? So what you want to do here is read this sentence and sort of summarize it the way we just did, and then choose the earliest point in the paragraph, or try the earliest point in the paragraph where they offer you to plug it in. So before sentence 1 would be like, okay, after I filled out a registration form and took a quick tour of the facility, I took a seat at a table and got right to work. Sentence 1 is saying, even though I already had all the equipment I needed in my home office, I decided to try a co-working space. Like, this definitely doesn't make sense, right? And then after sentence 1, so let's look at sentence 2, because what needs to happen here is, like, let's say it does belong after sentence 1, it would look like this. Sentence 1, and then this sentence in question, right, would go right afterwards, and then sentence 2. There has to be a perfect chronological fluidity between all three of these, okay? So make sure you check before and then the plugin and then after to make sure all of this makes sense in that order. So looking here at sentence 1, like, even though I already had all the equipment, I decided to try a co-working space. Then I filled out a registration form. And because I was specifically interested in co-working's reported benefits related to creativity, I chose a facility that offered a bright, open work area. You can stop here and be like, wait, he can't fill out the registration form and then pick a spot, right? So, no. And then after sentence 2, so again, he chose a facility, and then after he filled out a registration form, throughout the morning, more people appeared. So it's perfect right here. And let's just look at sentence 3 here. If it goes after that, periods of quiet during which everyone worked, right? This doesn't really make sense to go here because it would go as like, okay, he chose a facility and then filled out a registration form and then was noticing while he was there that throughout the morning, more people appeared. So 31 is C. 32 is actually a perfect example of a colon. So if you look here, over time, I've gotten to know several of my co-working colleagues who were this guy, this guy, this guy, and then these guys. So a colon is perfect here. For semicolons, you have to have a complete sentence after the semicolon, and this is a fragment here. It's just a list of people, but just sort of use this trick for colons. If the entire sentence is designed to lead around announcing or defining something after the colon or listing something, then a colon is appropriate. So over time, I've gotten to know several of my co-working colleagues who were all of these guys. So perfect use of a colon. On to 33. So this is sort of like a word choice thing based upon context. So even those of us who work in disparate fields are able to share advice and help each other brainstorm. Okay, helping each other brainstorm. It sort of has to vibe with that, right? Giving some wisdom. Compared to share advice, giving wisdom is kind of, awkward. So B is out. Proclaiming opinions is more like debating, and that's not really what's happening here. We're helping each other brainstorm, which share advice works well with. Opine is the verb version of making an opinion. So again, we're helping each other brainstorm, not really, enforcing or proclaiming our opinions. So D is out, and it is A. Heading over to the next passage, so if we look at 34, this is actually a transition word question, so we should look at the previous sentence, basically see, what it's saying. Long viewed by many as the stereotypical useless major, philosophy is now being seen by many students and prospective employers as in fact a very useful and practical major, offering students a host of transferable skills with relevance to the modern workplace. And then if you look at what they're saying after the transition word, kind of helps to do it this way, like without reading the transition word, so you can sort of see how these relate. Philosophy is the study of meaning and the values underlying thought and behavior. This is a definition of philosophy, so if you look here, in broad terms, this is a way of expressing a definition because they're saying generally, here's what philosophy is. So that's actually a pretty good option. And then looking at B, for example, you wouldn't use for example when you are trying to define something, right? So B is out. In contrast, this doesn't contrast with the previous sentence, so that's out, right? Nevertheless means regardless, which is not appropriate here. We're just trying to provide a definition, so A was the best choice here. And then if you look at 35, so we have a few different options that are basically all trying to say the same thing, and if you notice, there's one that's definitely the most concise, and that's the way it is originally. So if you're noticing this, like, okay, these are all saying the same thing, but like some of them are really wordy and there is a really short one, it doesn't mean the short one is automatically the answer, but you definitely want to try it and see if it could work, because their highest priority is grammatical correctness, but right behind that is short and sweet and concise, right? So if you look here, but more pragmatically, the discipline encourages students to analyze complex material, blah, 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 right? This is totally fine the way it is, so it would be A. Now, looking down here at 36, because philosophy teaching students, I don't think so. Because philosophy teaches students, sounds good. Because philosophy to teach students, no. Because philosophy and teaching students, no. Here we go. 37. This is a tough one. A lot of people get this one wrong, and it's no wonder. But if you remember from a previous question I mentioned, if they offer however as a possible transition word, you want to go and try that option first, because it tends to be the hardest one to recognize as the correct answer unless you're deliberately trying to make it work and trying to see how it could work, okay? So looking here, we should sort of analyze the relationship between these two sentences, like this sentence here and then this one, because we're going to wedge this in like right here, right? But here we go. Because philosophy teaches students not what to think, but how to think, the age-old discipline offers consistently useful tools for academic and professional achievement. In other words, philosophy is a good thing. It's a useful thing. And then we're going to wedge in one of these options right here at the 37 mark. But then after that, it's going to say, a 1994 survey concluded that only 18, this is important, only 18% required at least one philosophy course. In other words, colleges don't think very highly of philosophy. That's what the 1994 survey says, even though the previous sentence says that it's actually really useful, okay? And if you look at 37's question in general, which choice most effectively sets up the information that follows? So we need to sort of transition from, okay, philosophy is actually really useful, to colleges don't really take it seriously. And if you look at D, however, despite its many utilitarian benefits, colleges have not always supported the study of philosophy. That's perfect here. Utilitarian means useful. Okay, so, yep, perfect. Then, yet another transition, okay? So, without really looking at this word or trying this word quite yet, let's go ahead and look at the substance of the next sentence here. Between 1992 and 1996, more than 400 independent philosophy departments were eliminated from institutions. This is sort of a continuation of what they just said, where like colleges didn't really take it seriously. They only require at least one philosophy course. And even worse, sort of, right? More than 400 independent philosophy departments were eliminated from institutions. So this is sort of a continuation of colleges not really loving philosophy, right? So if you look here, would therefore make sense? No, because the previous sentence isn't sort of causing the next sentence. So no. And then thus is another way of saying therefore. That doesn't work either. Moreover, this is important. I would take this down if you don't know this word. A lot of people don't. Moreover just means additionally, which is actually a perfect transition for what we're looking for here. The however doesn't work because, again, it's a continuation of what they just said in the previous sentence. So D is out, and it is C. Okay. Now, heading over to 39. 39 is a really tough one for people, but again, we have a few different options, and then there's this really short and sweet option right here. Okay, so you want to be sort of sensitive to whether that could work, and try reading the whole sentence with that plugged in. And I know it sounds, it's easier said than done, but if you read it quickly, then you can see how it fits in, okay? The more you stumble through the wording and stuff, the harder it is to see that this actually works perfectly. So I'm going to do my best to read this out loud without messing it up, but also, studies have found that students who major in philosophy often do better than students from other majors in both verbal reasoning and analytical writing, as measured by standardized test scores. That was this plugged in. And that's perfect, right? So All these other ones are either comma splices or there's something, so this is a comma splice right here because they would have to use a period or a semicolon or something, right? Or they're just wordier than they have to be, so there we go. And then looking at 40 on the graduate record examination, GRE, for example, students intending to study philosophy in graduate schools. So here we have the verb hitting, has scored or have scored or scores or scoring, so it's a verb, right? You have to find who or what is doing this verb, and it's students intending to study philosophy in graduate school. You can skip all that to help you pick the correct version of the verb. Students have scored. That's agreeing in number, okay? So that's perfect there. And then going on to 41. These days, many students majoring in philosophy, they're just trying to express the plural version of student. You don't want an apostrophe for that, right? So it's going to be, either this or this. So these days, many students major in philosophy have no intention. No, it's got to be students majoring in philosophy have no intention. So 41 is B. And then at this point, the writer is considering adding the following sentence. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato, for example, wrote many of his works in the form of dialogue. So when they're thinking about adding a sentence, remember the first check you're doing is it relevant? Like, is it helpful to wedge this into the paragraph, right? Or is it super disruptive? So if you look here, it's just saying philosophy is basically really useful. And then all of a sudden they do this, call back to like ancient Greece, right? And using an example with Plato. And it's just not super relevant here. So should the person add this? And it's like, no. We just chop out the yeses here. And then if we look at the reasons, no, because it blurs the paragraph's focus. No, because it undermines the passage's claim. So it's not undermining the passage's claim because that would mean it's like disagreeing with its main point. But it does blur the paragraph's focus because it's not related enough, right? It's sort of interrupty. So this is C. Okay, guys, so last two, 43 and 44. Now, the beginning of the sentence actually starts in the previous page here for 43, so I've copied it here, and there's a weird sort of grammatical structure going on here that I'm going to copy. You should probably take notes on this. If you want to title this, you would say, beginning a sentence with the word that, okay? So you can have that, and then this big clause here, and then eventually a verb will hit, and then you probably have another clause or little snippet here, okay? So, for example, you could say, that we lost yesterday. And this is that clause I was mentioning. And then, surprises me. So you can see how this example is following that structure, right? Now, the more typical way to say this in like non-Yoda fashion, right, is it surprises me that we lost yesterday, right? But you can actually flip the clauses and start the sentence with that. And if you do it, the verb will eventually hit here, okay? So that we lost yesterday surprises me. And 43 is going to follow that same structure. So it says that these skills are transferable. And if you just chop the which, that these skills are transferable makes them, I'll use parentheses for the verb, makes them especially beneficial to 21st century students. So that's following this structure that I described here. So yeah, you just have to get rid of the which, and then it's going to follow this structure properly. So you just got to delete that. And then for 44, last one. Now this one's pretty frustrating for people because it just sounds good the way it is, with casual conversation, like during our lifetime, right? But English is super, super strict in that if it's going to use a pronoun, it does have to refer back properly to whatever noun it was listed in the previous portion of the sentence, right? It's called the antecedent. So, like, during whose lifetime are we talking about? So let's go back earlier in the sentence. Because today's students can expect to hold multiple jobs. So how do we refer to students? It's during their lifetime. So there you go. For those of you interested in more in-depth videos and online one-on-one tutoring, head over to capstoneacademics.com and reach out to us through the Contact Us form, email us, or call us. The link's in the description below. For free walkthroughs, test-taking tips, and updates, follow us on social media on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you found this helpful, please go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe for more SAT walkthroughs and math help all year long. This is Jesse Brockwell from Capstone Academics. Thanks so much for watching, and see you soon.